Armstrong.
Got it.
Got it. She's an assemblywoman from Clark County down in Las Vegas. So she's here to kind of see what we do up in our area of the woods. And so we're finally got them together here, and I'll let you take over.
Oh, great. How do you work that? Oh, is this on? Sorry.
Yeah.
All right, first of all, I'm Ira Hansen. I'm a state senator that represents this area. I was a state assemblyman I've been representing since 2012 when they did the reapportionment of all of Winnemucca and Humboldt County. So we also should thank Louis Strout. Thank you, Louis, for putting this all together. This is the first opportunity since before COVID that we've had a chance to come and meet with have big audiences like this. And poor Chandra has terrible allergies. She discovered in our car asthma. No, she discovered she's allergic to conservative Republicans. No, she has bad asthma. She didn't get her medication. Just so you know, you guys probably know anything about me. I'm a very conservative Republican. And Shonda is from a very liberal part of Las Vegas. And she talked to me, and and she says, you need to come see my part of the state. And I said, okay. So Alexis and I went down and went to the predominantly black part of Las Vegas. And then Chandra said, I want to come see your part of the state. It's a deal. So we found out, Anyway, that's kind of how this whole arrangement happened. And so we're very happy to have her here. And we knew she would love Winnemucca and that people would be very receptive. And she, like I said, Democrat, Republican, we're trying to work through because we have to be bipartisan in the state to get anything done. And so we're very delighted that she was willing to come with us and to have an opportunity to see what's going on in Humboldt County. What are the issues that are critical to this part of the state? Because the reality is this: there are 17,000 people roughly in Humboldt County. In Shonda's assembly district, there are 75,000 people. Okay, in one assembly district, and there's about 35 assembly districts in Clark County. So we're kind of in a democracy. Sometimes it's not very good to be in the minority. And so we're trying to work through these things and at the legislature make sure that Humboldt County and rural Nevada's interests are well represented as humanly possible. So we were delighted to have an opportunity to meet Chandra, work with Chandra, see what her issues are in her part of the state, and now she's doing the same for us. We're grateful for that. I don't know how Dave got me in charge of the meeting, but the bad thing is there was a time when I was a talk radio host, and I would do a 3-hour radio show 5 days a week. So I'm pretty comfortable behind the microphone talking for a long time. So you ever need somebody to show up at one of your meetings and just kind of fill time? Yeah, say, hey, get that Hansen guy. That guy talks forever, I swear. So anyway, that's an introduction to me. I will next allow my beautiful wife, who really is the boss. When I used to come to these meetings, by the way, before she was elected, because people would say things like, well, who do you really represent? Like the big mining backing you or the big casinos? And I always say, I answer to one person. Really, who? I said, her name's Alexis. She's my wife. And that's absolutely the truth. And I would always bounce everything off of my wife, call her during the meetings and everything else. And then when the opportunity for me to go to the state senate came up, I wanted to make sure I had a reliable conservative person representing my district, and I had a hard time recruiting somebody. So I talked to a beautiful woman, and she said, hell no. We have 8 kids, so I was kind of like, I knew how to work on her a little bit. And I got her finally to run, and she's been a phenomenally successful assemblywoman, and everybody loves her. In fact, I always say, we've had the wrong Hansen in here for quite a while now. So they're very delighted to see Alexis here. So anyway, sorry.
Thank you. Is my mic on? There we go. Hello, thank you so much for your hospitality. Again, thanks to Louis Trout for just putting all the logistics together and for you taking time out from your day. So it's my honor to have been elected to represent Assembly District 32. Starting in 2019 was my first session, first elected in 2018. And then the district has changed a little bit. They had redistricting in November of a special session of 2021, and I got a little things changed. Luckily, they kept Humboldt County with us, which we were thrilled. I have a little section, so that you know this, we live in Sparks, the Sparks area, and then my family, though, has been in Nevada since the late 1800s, originally in Lincoln County. My family came from Wales to the silver mines of Pioche, and my dad was a DA in Eureka County for over 30 years, DA in Esmeralda County for a period of time, and so it really means a lot to me to be able to represent so much of the state that I just love, and it's just really in my DNA. The other counties we have Pershing, Humboldt, a small section of Eureka, a sliver of Elko County, and a large portion of Washoe. So Lander, I'm sorry, Lander, all of Lander County. And what's been really lovely, I think, about the district is we get to have a part of that urban interface, but a large interface with rural Nevada, which is near and dear to our heart. So we want you to know that we're here. It's 33,000 square miles. We rely on you to help us understand what's going on, because we can't be everywhere. We do like to drive throughout our district, and we do quite often, but we all lived through the shutdown and things were a lot more difficult. So we kind of see this as a way to springboard and get on top of some of the issues that you're facing here in the state as we go into legislative session in a couple of weeks. You might be familiar, but in Nevada, luckily, we only go into a legislative session every 2 years. Wish it was a little longer, because sometimes when we get there, we do mischief, but we're there for 120 days, and in that 120 days, a lot goes on. We'll hear about 1,100 bills. We will actually do about 800 floor votes, which mean those are laws. So in that 120 days, you'll see a lot of bills get passed that can be for good and sometimes be a hindrance, especially to the counties and to municipalities. That's what we want to be sensitive to. We're here to represent you at the state level, and so our hands are tied in some regards. Some issues you deal with as constituency deal with municipal matters, with county issues. But where we can be of help or help you not have a hindrance at the state level, that's what we want to know about. Let me see, we own a small plumbing company, 8 kids, 20 grandkids, with 3 more on the way, so 23 and 23 is our number, and that's our pride and joy. But again, thank you for being here. We're so grateful. You will find out why we have developed a strong bond with the Assemblywoman Summers Armstrong. She lights up a room. She's a lot of fun, and there are many funny things that happen in the legislatures. You can have some strange bedfellows, and we've become so partisan, but yet there are some common things and common ground that you can find. And I'm sure as you have conversations with her, she has a good heart. She wants to know, as she's been asking questions for the whole ride. And it's been so fun to share what we love about rural Nevada. And then when we were in her district, how much she connects with her district. We're literally driving down the street. We stop at a stop sign. The windows go down. They're talking to her. So that same kind of connection you have in this community, she has in hers. And I think one of the things I love best about Chandra is, and she stated it, it's the state. She doesn't just see it as Clark County, it's the state, and she wants to know more about it. So appreciate your hospitality, so glad to be here, and turn the time over to Chandra.
Thank you, everyone. I am an asthma sufferer, so I'm struggling a little bit, but good morning, and thank you all for being here and for welcoming me. I'm Chandra Summers Armstrong. I represent Assembly District 6 in the heart of Las Vegas. This is my second term. I'm still a newbie. There's so much to learn. But the one thing I think you'll learn about me that will be a resounding truth for me is that I love my community. And by loving my community, I love this state. It's been good to me and my family. And I've learned through my relationship with the Hansons, we were talking all the way, mostly Ira, the things that we have in common. Las Vegas is a big little city, and the community that I represent has had booms and busts, much like things that happen here in the north. And when we are insensitive and we're not asking the right questions and we're not making the right relationships, sometimes best laid plans can really damage communities. And I am determined, as long as I am in this seat, to try to build relationships with folks that have, and it doesn't matter just because you're a conservative. I mean, come on. Funny thing, I represent a Democratic community, but they're not necessarily liberal. Okay, so this is one thing you'll learn about Black people. We are not a monolith, and my district is not all Black, and it's quite well mixed. So I have to be conscious of the needs of the entire community, just like I have to be conscious of the needs of the state of Nevada. I want to do a good job for my constituents and for my fellow Nevadans, and you can't do that in a silo, and you can't do that with a closed mind, and you can't do that if you're sitting in only your neighborhood and you don't go anyplace else to learn anything about anybody else. So this exchange of ideas and of stories and of family and this breaking of bread is how we get to learn how much we have in common. She's talking about her family. She says she's from Wales, and I learned that Irish folks are Danish. I lived in Germany for 4 years in a very rural community, and I had to learn, first of all, a different language. I had to learn a different culture. I had to learn how to drive in a different manner. And when you live internationally, and I was lucky enough to do so, it helps you to understand how much communication is important to understanding. And I'm here because I believe that there are many things that my community has in common with you, and I want to do the good work so that all of our communities can thrive. All of our families, we have one thing in common, all of us. We love our children, we love our families, we want opportunity, and we have to work together to do that from one end of the state to the other. I'm grateful to be here. You have an amazing building. I walked in, I saw the dental and the columns and the balustrades, and I'm like bubbling. It's so beautiful. That someone thought that this community was amazing enough that your community was worthy to have something this beautiful. And that means that what you are doing here is important, and I'm here to help any way I can. So I really appreciate you all. Thank you so much.
So maybe what we should do, I know that, as I understand, the goal was to focus on the legislative session and some potential concerns coming up with some of the bills that are being brought through the legislature. So I guess what we could do, what I would ask that if you have a question, that you come on up, and we're trying to record this. We do have people online that would love to hear those questions as well, and I know that's a little bit of a hassle, but I would appreciate that. I'm certain, our representatives would as well. So I would just open it up. If anybody wants to start the questioning and has something that's burning in their mind that they want to come up, I would ask you to do that. If not, I've got a list of things that I can start throwing out there. And so, I'll open up to anybody who'd like to come up first. And I knew it would be Mr. Lewis.
And don't be bashful too. This is your, remember, you're talking to a plumber, okay? I mean, a high school graduate plumber. So don't be intimidated. Oh, he's a lawyer or something. No, I'm not. So come on up and let's visit. We knew Lewis would not pass up the opportunity.
Oh, you brought the binder.
Uh-oh. It's looking kind of official. Maybe we should have got a lawyer. Make your mics on.
It's on. You're just gonna move it a little closer. Did we get there?
Testing 362. Okay. Assembly members, Summers Armstrong, this flight owns Sie kennen zu lernen.
Ich spreche ein bisschen Deutsch.
Their ambition. I'd like to discuss an opportunity for bipartisan work that could be a great benefit to the communities the state, and to the citizens of Nevada. As you know, the state treasurer maintains a database of what is called unclaimed property. These are restricted accounts. Some members of the legislature have more of these in their own name than others. But in going through this, we find that many of the accounts are quite old. The best example of this aging issue is to look at an input into the Treasurer's database, the words Democrat and Republican. And we find that the Democrats have 47 accounts, the Republicans have 48 accounts. Some of these accounts go back 30 years or more. The question becomes, what is the story on this aging? It's the first item in your packet. They go back many years, and kudos to Zach Kozine, the state treasurer, who added to the database the dates these accounts went to the state. As you know, the companies that have the accounts have 3 years to try and give the money back to the rightful owners. Only then does it go to the state. But when we look at this, and you go to after your Republican and Democrat, you'll note the state of Nevada, if you put those words in, you come up with 645 plus accounts of various state agencies that have money just sitting in the state treasurer's office. Many of these departments, and I've just had a representative sample of 8 pages to show you that there's boards, there's departments, there's various entities, all of which have the opportunity, without any special legislation, to apply to get their funds back and to augment their budgets in this current year. Now, next one is Clark County. If you look at Clark, and you put in the words Clark County, you come up with more than 495 accounts. This would indicate that the largest county in the state has definitely the largest number of county accounts. Now, not all of these accounts are governmental accounts. Some of them are nonprofit organizations, chambers of commerce, that type of organization. But the majority are governmental. This needs to be brought to the attention of the county commission in Clark so that they initiate action to get their money back. We're talking tens of thousands of dollars. If you look at Washoe County, you see 160 accounts. Same problem as Clark. Many of them are agencies of Washoe County, that need to be applied for to get the funds back into the public so that they can be used for governmental and the benefit of the taxpayers. Now, this contrasts with Humboldt County, which only has 19 accounts. And the majority of those, well, several of those are for the Chamber of Commerce. So you see that there's a big range, 645 in the biggest county, 160 in the second biggest, but only 19 in the rurals. Now, if you go to the cities, the city of Las Vegas has 67 accounts when you put that phrase in. Again, not all of them are public accounts. Some of them are private organizations, nonprofits. But again, the city needs to be made aware that they have this source of augmenting funds. Now, we're not talking millions of dollars, we're talking thousands, but still lots of thousands of dollars. If we talk about the city of Reno, we have 52 accounts that come up in response to city of Reno. Most of those are public accounts. Somebody needs to alert the city of Reno to be able to apply for theirs. Now, if you can compare this with some of the other cities in those 2 counties, Henderson has 10 accounts. Sparks has only 2 accounts. And the city of Winnemucca, which cleared all of its accounts, I think there were 6, 2 or 3 years ago, only has 1 account that went up in October of 2022. The bottom line that a lot of entities, governmental and nonprofits and individuals, don't know that these funds are there and available for them to apply for. There was just a couple other members of your group and applying for theirs.
You helped me once before.
Yeah.
Likes his hands. Just so everybody in the audience knows, Lewis already did this to me, and he brought us, he said, you know, you have, I think it was several $100s in some account that I didn't know existed. Also, there's a way that the state can have this cheat back to the state after a certain number of years.
It's 3 years.
3 years?
3 years from private parties, businesses, till the state treasurer gets it. But here's the problem, or two problems. Whether it was Kate Marshall, whether it was Dan Schwartz, whether it's Zach Conant, they run an ad every year of the accounts that just went up in the prior 12 months. The ad typically is run in newspapers of general circulation. Some people see these, and some people apply for them, whether it's an individual or a business or an entity, a governmental entity. But each year, roughly $75 million currently is cheated to the state, but only $37 million or so is returned to individuals and entities in the same year. So that means each year there's $30 million plus or minus that goes into this fund. In the case of Winnemucca, our hospital board, under the leadership of the new CEO, Robin Dunkhorst, put a team together, and they looked at how many accounts were there for the local hospital district. They weren't a large number, but they exceeded $13,000. They applied for their $13,000, and they got it back to put into the hospital funds. There needs to be, in terms of the public and in terms of nonprofits and in terms of the governmental agencies, a forfeiture legislation. How many years should these funds sit and do nothing? 30 to 40 years in the case of the Republican and Democratic parties. Seems like an awfully long time for any account to be up there. Some states have a 1-year time frame. That seems awfully short. One nonprofit executive said 10 years. If you look at these numbers, you'll see that some of the accounts are less than $25. I'd suggest that anything less than $10 ought to be swept up after 2 years at the state treasurer's office. $10 to $100, perhaps every 4 years. $100 to $1,000 every 6 years, more than 1,000 of which there are a considerable number in Clark County, perhaps every 8 years. That gives people sufficient time to apply to get their funds back. If the funds are swept up and put into the general fund or designated specific funds, that's fine. They do something positive for the citizens and for the community. Now, how do we know that these funds are going to be spent for the purposes for which the legislature appropriates money? Well, in the current system, we really don't have a good mechanism to do that. Assembly member Brittany Miller, who, by the way, represents District 5, adjacent to yours. Not adjacent? They have
Numerically, but not
numerically, yes, but not geographically. She introduced legislation in the last session of the legislature to create the office of a state inspector general, to be able to go out and look at questionable entities in terms of mismanagement, in terms of perhaps violations of the Federal Labor Standards Act, double payroll, contracting irregularities. Andrew Martin, who was a former assemblyman you all may know, an expert on forensic and fraud CPA work, perhaps the #1 person in the state in those areas, worked with Assemblymember Miller on this legislation. Well, for whatever reason, a special interest was able to derail it, and it didn't make it out of the assembly. I would hope that you would encourage Assemblymember Miller and perhaps other members of the assembly and Andrew Martin to come forward again with this proposal so that they can look at some of these questionable activities. In one rural county, a preliminary investigation of just public records that Mr. Martin conducted indicated that perhaps $25 million was mismanaged in various ways over a 10-year period. If we'd had an inspector general, that might have been caught before the mismanagement went rampant. The information about the mismanagement was turned over to then Attorney General Adam Laxalt by a member of the county commission here. That information was accepted, was assigned to Patty Cafferata. Eventually it ended up in the Chief of Staff's office. Much to the surprise of Ms. Cafferata, it never made it out of the Chief of Staff's office. There was no investigation, no research, no nothing. Further review found that when that Chief of Staff had been a member of the Assembly, one of the contractors working with the particular entity had made a campaign contribution. And there were lines of communication that suggest there may have been let sleeping dogs lie, don't follow up on this. At any rate, nothing happened. If we'd had the Inspector General, as Assemblymember Miller wanted initially, this kind of thing may be reduced. And we can make sure that funds that are appropriated are spent for the purpose for which they're appropriated and not to line somebody's pocket, not for junkets to Hawaii, none of the questionable activities that periodically surface in various agencies of government at the federal, state, and local level. Again, I would encourage you both to consider forfeiture legislation to transfer funds from this particular account, which has $800 million in it. Nobody knows how much would be swept up in each of these types of changes that would have the funds or have funds go to the general fund. Could be 10 million, could be 50 million, could be 100. We don't know. This is the kind of thing that the legislature and the state treasurer, perhaps even the state controller, need to work together on in a bipartisan way to solve this particular problem and to bring order to this particular system. Thank you very much for your attention.
Lois, before you run off, you and I have discussed this at length several times. We tried to do the consumer advocate, inspector general concept. I was going to be a co-sponsor with Brittany. It actually got blocked by the Attorney General's office, what ended up happening, as I recall, because they have something similar in that office, and we were trying to create a new private entity, because in some cases, frankly, they would need to investigate the Attorney General's office. So that's where the snag came in from Brittany, because I remember this, because we were working on it. We got a new slate now, we'll see what happens. I don't know if Brittany's gonna reintroduce or not, but it's definitely needed, no question.
And it needs to be independent, because
That's the point.
it needs to be free to investigate constitutional offices, legislative offices, governmental agencies of all kinds that are subordinate to the state. This would be a real plus if you're free of money. By the way, on Republicans and Democrats, it might be worthwhile to get some of the older accounts cleared and then divide up the money among the various members. Let's just say it's $10,000 into, I don't pick a number of the year, and it got divided up in $500 groups to the various members for them to donate to charities or nonprofits in their own districts. I would think that you guys would be interested in putting them at a food bank, for example, as one possible charity. In Las Vegas, Catholic Charities is another big organization that assists people who are homeless in need, food, clothing, shelter, different charities of that type that perform valuable social services, rather than just spending the money on increased political activity. Just a thought.
Louis, by the way, since you are a veteran and run the veterans group here, you probably should tell Chandra, who has a military background as well, why you were speaking German.
My very small German vocabulary stems from actually high school many years ago.
Oh. Were you in the military or never in Germany?
I was in the Navy.
Oh.
yeah.
So,
Speak Japanese?
no, I speak Navy. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
have a time frame you're working on, as to when you need to be out of here to your next stop?
When everybody here's done talking to us, then we can leave. We're here, our next meeting is at 1 o'clock.
Okay,
So we're here till 1 o'clock, or if we have to go longer, we will. Like, this is the first time in 2 years we've had a chance to talk. We have to be at 1 o'clock? City council. What's more important, the county commission or the city council? For you guys.
You know the city's here, right?
I only brought it up just because I didn't know if you had some time constraints, but, so I would just, with all due respect, Mr. Trout, if everybody could take 3 to 5 minutes, because we have a lot of things, we could be here all afternoon. I don't want to have you guys have to run out of here, so, in the middle of that, so just think about that if you can.
Everybody out there is as well prepared as Louis Trout was. We could be here a while, but honestly, it's worth it. You know, he's talking $800 million accounts that's sitting there. The state of Nevada can certainly use some of that money, no question about it. So yeah, he seriously, he got a hold of me and said, did you know you have like 4 accounts? I think it was, $200 or something. It wasn't huge, but it was a bit no. And multiply that by all the people out there, it's substantial dollars. Who would like to come? It's your chance. Grill the senator and the assembly folks. Hi there.
I think I might know who this is. Don't you have a really awesome vehicle that was in the Veterans Parade, I think, that I was?
Several years ago, I now have a new one. It's a hand-me-down from the federal government, but I have a new one. It's even sleeker.
Oh, goodness. See what happens when you miss a few parades? I haven't got up to speed. So it's Mr. Sheen?
Tory Sheen. I am a native Nevadan. And with all due respect to the assemblywoman from Clark County, Las Vegas, my fear is water, and it's a biggie. And I know that at one point there was a water commission or something in the Clark County area that was trying to spread its tentacles to the rest of the state to get water. And now all of a sudden the Colorado Water Commission or something like that is telling everybody along the Colorado River they've got to cut the allocation by 30%. I invite you to take her down to the Humboldt River where there's no water. We're in a drought. We've had some really great snow. I'm sure that you guys have scraped snow off of your yard. And so I'm just hoping that going forward in this legislative session, I didn't get to see all of the governor's address last night due to some stupid thing by Channel 8 out of Reno, but I know he talked water as well. I'm just hoping that if there is any movement towards trying to allocate more water from out of other basins into Clark County, that we can stop it. I mean, it's frightening. Several, I'm gonna say 4 decades ago, a friend of mine named John Marble, you might remember the name, said back then, every entity in northern Nevada and rural Nevada should file on every water right that there is to hang on to it, because at some point, water is gonna be more valuable than gold, and I truly believe that, so that's just what I'm asking. I'm hoping that you're gonna fight for that. And I realize that Clark County needs water, but it needs fewer golf courses, it needs fewer fountains, stuff like that, so.
Boy, did you hit on a topic, huh? Water. I mean, we've been fighting about water. Since I've been in the legislature, that's been a huge one. Now, we represent Lovelock too, and they blame you guys, okay? So, and then when I come to here, they blame everybody upstream all the way to Elko. We also represented at one point Jeremy Lake and Walker Lake. One thing we have learned is you do not want to be on the end of a communal water system. And what's happened, there was recently a lawsuit over some of this, and a ruling by a judge, and this would be advantageous, in my opinion, to everybody from here downstream, and that is you have to have conjunctive management of both surface and groundwaters. Because as you know, there's a great deal of pumping upstream from Humboldt County, but so by the time the folks down in Rye Patch, which have the senior water rights on the system for the most part,
Yeah.
There's no water in our eye patch, especially in drought years like now. I know maybe this winter, we're hoping, keep your fingers crossed, it's looking good, a lot better than it has for several years. But again, that whole issue is a huge issue, and the state water engineer has, I feel sorry for the guys, okay? Just so you know, when I walked into this whole water issue, the guy that has to make the call on that is the state water engineer. And he has to deal with decisions that were made decades ago as to who gets to have water. All the people that have known, we do have the prior appropriation doctrine, which basically is first in time, first in right. And the person who has the senior water right is allowed to use 100% of their allocation before one drop goes to the junior water right holders. That has been kind of ignored for a long time. The problem politically is there's a whole lot more junior water right holders than senior water right holders. So if you're in Diamond Valley, Eureka County, and they have had major drawdown problems there for years, they take a lot more water than the aquifer recharges, how do you solve the problem? Now, the correct, honest way, ignoring politics, is, okay, who's the senior water right? Who has the senior water right? When that individual gets 100% allocation and uses it, then we give the next person in line the same opportunity. What's happened and what they're trying to do now is say, okay, let's spread the misery out. And the governor mentioned that in his speech last night. We're all going to equally share in the pain, is kind of what he was suggesting. Legally, though, that's not what the law says. Now, as far as picking on Vegas, what happened with the pipeline, White Pine County, that's not Humboldt County drainage, okay? Most of that does not come into the Humboldt. In Nevada, it's still a law. Water rights are a transferable water right, or a property right. Just like if I bought a car in Washoe County and I want to take it out of Washoe County and move it to Humboldt County, same concept with water. As long as the state water engineer says, okay, it's not going to harm the aquifer and the other users of the water in the basin. So that's where Southern Nevada Water Authority back in the 80s, early 90s, went and bought up those big, beautiful ranches in Spring Valley and Snake Valley and all that area, and then started planning to transfer that water down to Clark County eventually. Endless lawsuits, you got everybody from the Mormon church to the ranchers to everybody else fighting them, and they recently said, we're not going to do it.
2018.
Yeah,
There's a rule
one other
against
thing,
the Southern Nevada.
one other thing they were hoping to do is to do basically a transfer on the Colorado. Instead of taking water out of eastern Nevada, they would be able to use more water out of the Colorado basin while having desalinization plants on the Gulf of Mexico, transfer some of that water to Mexico, which also has water rights on the Colorado. So when you get in this, it's very complicated. And we actually got beat up here in Humboldt County because an individual in Paradise Valley said, Ira and Alexis are actually secretly working for the developers of Spanish Springs, and they plan to transfer all your Humboldt County water to Reno and Sparks. And just so you know, that was pure 100% BS. We had no connections with that, and we've been fighting to keep Humboldt water here. The problem you have is because it is a transferable water right. Okay, there's an individual who bought a tremendous amount of the water that is being used around here. And he is a water broker, if you will, and he has a legal right, if he can get past the state engineer, to transfer it to another basin. That's the real danger. And the solution to that, we can change the law. You're not going to get that law changed in the Nevada legislature. It's not going to happen. But don't sell your water. Remember, if you've got a water right, there's nobody says you have to sell it. And then, of course, if there is going to be a transfer, go to court. Because the reason that they've been able to in Snake Valley and in Spring Valley, they've got the quantity of water that was going to be transferred through that pipeline down to where it's almost economically unfeasible for Southern Nevada Water Authority to do it. There's a huge cost in piping that water. So lawsuits have been very successful, and then you have strange bedfellows. Like I said, the Mormon church got involved in that, and they carry significant weight, especially in Utah, politically speaking. And consequently, you saw the state engineers back off, the lawsuits, the cost of all that. At some point, there's an economic factor in all of this as well. So anyway, I wish I had a magic bullet like pray for rain, but my connection with the good Lord apparently isn't that great because when I've asked, it didn't happen. So I'm still trying at the state level. That is going to be a huge issue, but the problem for me is I support the prior appropriation concept. That's been law forever. And so to make the pain equal to everybody, well, politically, that's where everybody's going. That isn't what the law says. And if you're Ron Cherry and you happen to have water off of Rebel Creek, and you got those water rights going back forever, you have a right to that water. And everybody else around Nevada that thinks that, well, Ron's not, he should share equally in the pain if we're having a drawdown on the aquifer. And that's not how it's supposed to work.
And I understand, I mean, if somebody comes up to you with a wheelbarrow full of money,
Well, that's the problem. You think all those ranchers in Spring Valley didn't make it? They made a lot of money by having the Las Vegas folks come up there and dump a whole ton of cash. I got a good friend in Lincoln County when I remember Coyote Springs, that was going on. He's a Morgan guy raising alfalfa down along, I forget the name of that drainage down there. They offered him like $5 million for his water, and he could still keep using it until Coyote Springs kicked in. So, you're making $50,000 a year working your butt off on an alfalfa pivot and raising a few cows, and suddenly somebody offers you $5 million and says, guess what, until we take the water, we'll let you use it. That's very tempting.
it's a tough question, but I mean, it's just something like I say, I mean, 4 decades ago when John Marble, who indeed sold his ranch so that Newmont finally could get the water rights, I mean, it's just a long problem. And we've got, at some point, Dave Mendiola should fill you guys in on the problems that we're having out in an area that we call Grass Valley.
Well, we're familiar. In fact, Dave just cornered me about it, trying to get, because you got the nitrate levels rising. We've been aware about that. Goes back to that strike talking to us about that. So we've been coming out there for 10 years.
Thank you very much for coming out. We appreciate it.
Well, I just want to tell you that last session, there was a bill passed. You specifically mentioned Las Vegas, and so again, I'm the newbie. But I will tell you that last session we passed some legislation that really, although it's a state law, it's really focused on Las Vegas. And that is that those large developments that have all this greenery everywhere, you have to rip it out. I happened to be at a Southern Nevada Water District meeting a couple of weeks ago, and there was a representative, high-powered lawyer, I'm sure, from one of the golf course communities who was complaining about, they needed more time. And I have to give it to Marilyn Kirkpatrick is the chairman of that board, and they were very, very firm. We, and in Las Vegas, we know that we have lots of people that want to live there. We don't do golf courses anymore. They're not giving any more new licenses for golf courses. They're making them ramp back their water, so they're not going to be green golf courses anymore. They're going to be kind of beige, right? We're in the desert, so they need to be beige. But one of the very, very sad things that I've always noticed is in our very affluent communities, when we would see water irrigating outside, just running down the street like a river. And this new law is there to address that. If your children are not playing on it, if it's not a soccer field, if it's not having a community use, we don't need that, right? We need to respect that we don't live in a verdant environment, and every drop of water means something. When we use water in Southern Nevada indoors, they are able to recapture upwards of 98% of it, clean it, put it through we have the Las Vegas wash. It has reeds and bushes that water runs through, and it cleans it in a natural way. So it goes through a process, a chemical process, then through the wash, and goes back into the lake, into Lake Mead. Thank you, I'm having a moment. So those laws and those directives are really to make us in compliance, and we have strict water usage now. There was just a story in the RJ yesterday, the day before, that there's going to be huge fines for residential users who are exceeding the amount of water that is allocated. They tell us every single season how many days you have. And I'm from Northern California originally. I haven't lived there forever, but I love trees and I love grass. But you know what? I don't live there anymore, right? So we have to be respectful of our environment. We are working diligently at the county level to do their part, but they're taking their cue from us, the legislature. We gave them the parameters for which to impose this. They have run with it immediately, and they are making, and those, if you go down there, you can see many of those very lovely gated, well-managed communities, there's no more grass, and that water is not running down the street. So we're doing our part, and this is good for me to hear, right? You have a serious issue. So when I'm in the room, I will be thinking of you, Mr. Sheen, and I will be thinking of the faces that I see. This is the reason why it's important for me to be here.
Not important. Not a big.
Excuse me. I drove a long way to get here. You are important.
Thank you all for coming, and especially you, Susan. We appreciate you coming up.
Thank you, Mr. And while we're waiting for somebody else to come up, please, I just want to kind of reinforce what Assemblywoman Summers Armstrong said. It was this county, Clark County, that came to the Nevada legislature with that bill to remove the grass and put in turf in the green areas that were not being utilized. They were more like the green belts around HOA areas and golf courses and such. So that was a bill that Clark County itself did bring forward. And so, and I serve on public lands, and I can tell you that Southern Nevada Water Authority is really trying to work through a lot of measures to make sure that they're being really good stewards of the water. And that decision in 2018, not allowing that Southern Nevada pipeline. So water is tricky, and water is really an essential part of a lot of our discussions. But there is some good news, but there's still a lot of difficult things to navigate. So we're going to give it our best.
The unspoken thing in all this, though, is growth, okay? We say we're not born and raised in Sparks. I remember in '87 they put in meters for the first time, and water consumption per capita went down dramatically. As the price went up, people used less of it. The problem is, then they build more and more housing tracts, and and then they use the water. And so what we really, frankly, need is to pray that the economy of California substantially improves so that people aren't leaving there by the literally millions. They finally, for the first time in the history of California, had a population shrinkage because the way things are being run there, frankly. And those people are leaving for Texas and Arizona and Reno and Sparks and Las Vegas and Boise, Idaho. And if you don't see that turn around, there are 35 million people still in California, and even if 10% of them relocate, that's 3.5 million people going somewhere. And for a smaller community like Humboldt County, frankly, the growth is a positive thing. But when you start looking at the water consumption, when we save water through all these things we're doing, they then turn around and use it to build more housing for all the folks coming in. And that's kind of like the big question. Okay, we were talking about, I hate growth, just so you know. I've lived in the same area my whole life. All the areas I used to hunt and fish and trap and all those things, they're all houses. They're all paved over. Literally, the whole Truckee River Canyon is slowly filling up. The Fernley area is. I don't like any of that. However, I don't know how you have a strong economy in the absence of that. And for those of you that remember, you go back, you've lived here a long time. I was talking to Shonda about it. I remember coming to Winnemucca in 98 or 99. This place was like a ghost town. There were abandoned houses around here because the mines had all shut down, price of gold had gone down. It was flat scary. I experienced that when the economy collapsed in 2008, 9, 10 in my neck of the woods. There were houses that people literally were abandoning their houses. You go and see these foreclosure notices on it. So all of a sudden, for the first time in my life, I had experienced an environment where there was not only no growth, but there was no economy. And let me tell you, I had 7 kids still at home to feed, and it was a frightening thing for a high school graduate that had a big family and was used to having lots of opportunity. And that opportunity went away for the first time. It came back about 2014. But some of the cost of that coming back has been dramatic expansion and growth. So it's kind of like a catch-22. I wish I had some magic bullet to tell everybody we can stop growth, but that's also stopping the economy that provides everybody with economic opportunities. It's a tough thing, but no question about it. Las Vegas, in spite of the pipeline and all that, have done a phenomenal job. If you look at their per capita consumption of water, and it's called reclaimed water, where they take sewage water basically, don't completely clean it, but they go to a standard where it's actually drinkable still, and they use that for things like golf courses or whatever. They have the amount of water, the total consumption that they use has dropped dramatically. I mean, it's very interesting looking at the numbers. By the way, it's not the big casinos that use most of the water. Ag has the greatest consumption of water in Nevada. So, and I can tell you some stories of that with Mary Reed. Mary, I read the talk show host better shut up. Sorry, Dave.
No problem. Since you're on the water, though, I'd like to inject, kind of get off that. Yeah, right.
Injection wells, let's go with
Just
that.
kind of take us off into an exit here. So we talked, I had a moment with Senator Hansen about Grass Valley community out here and the nitrate issues that have been going on for 40 years essentially. We have done a preliminary engineering report to the ultimate solution, of course, is a wastewater collection and treatment facility. We've got all the engineering not done, but we know exactly what we want to do. The only issue, of course, is funding. We had a hope, a great hope about mid-year last year. The governor's office, Governor Sisolak's office, had worked out a partnership with the state revolving fund, who, for those of you who don't know, they provide funding for utilities, wastewater treatment, water systems. They've really helped us here in Humboldt County. It's a tremendous program. It's also nationwide, but it's been great for us in Humboldt County. But they had worked out a deal where they were going to provide us the full $30 million that we need to get this thing completed. However, late last year, prior to the election, Governor Sisolak changed the rules after he'd already committed some money to the state revolving fund for a lot of other people, not just us. But and I think he announced the Drought Resilience and Conservation Initiative, which changed all the rules. And so now the SRF is going through the system and redoing everything. And I'm told that we are not going to get anywhere near the amount of money that we'd hoped we were going to get. And so what I would like to ask of you is to look into that with the governor's office. We have made a number of attempts with the transition team, for Governor Lombardo's team. And there's been a little movement, but not much, to be honest with you. We haven't even gotten calls back, to be honest with you, in some cases. So I would love to see you guys make some inquiries and to find out what we need to do, because this is a big public health issue in Grass Valley. Very dangerous. Two of our wells have already been shut down, and more will in the coming years if we don't. There's only one solution. So anyway, I would just ask that you keep that in the back of your mind and maybe make some calls and see if we can get somebody to talk to us.
What did you say got shut down? You said two what?
There's two wells, yeah, current wells, one with Gold Country water and one with.
Let's do this. Text Ben Teekepper. Hey Ben, it's Ira. Hey, I'm in Winnemucca right now and I'm meeting with a bunch of folks in the county commission chambers. They just brought to my attention that under the Sisolak administration, there was going to be $30 million given for a sewer treatment plant in Grass Valley. Can you do me a favor and either call Dave Mendiola, the county manager, or give me a call? I know you guys are busy with the transition and all, but we need to get on that. There's some significant health issues, and that's in my district. So if you can help, I would really appreciate it. Thanks, Ben. Take care. Ben's chief of staff of the government, and he served with me in the Senate last time. So if he doesn't call you, I'm going to call him and say, give Dave a call.
Dave, we might have your number, but can you give it to me and we'll text it to him?
Anyway, we'll get on it. Yeah, those kind of things. Right now, ironically enough, for the first time that I've been in office, we have a $5.5 billion with a B surplus in state funds. Because all the COVID money and stuff that was done, the governor's speech was all about, trying to put some of that aside for a rainy day fund. But honestly, we got a ridiculous amount of money. One thing is, you'll undoubtedly know, government surpluses don't last very long, because there's an unlimited demand for money. But hopefully we can get that $30 million back on, because it was with the Sisolak administration. So, and frankly, politically, I'd say, hey, the governor was rural Nevada a big favorite. Lombardo lost in Clark and Washoe counties. It was the rural counties that made him governor. I remind him of that occasionally. So.
Yeah, so I just want to clarify in case he does call you back.
Mm-hmm.
So what the governor's office did under Sisolak is called SRF and said, we're going to give you $100 million. you can give it to whoever you want that's on your priority list, because they keep an ongoing priority list. And of course, we were number one on that list with the $30 million, and they told me privately that they were gonna put it in for us to get that 30 million of the 100. And then all the changes came in, that 100 million got redirected under this new program, which is a great program, anything with conservation of water and all that. It's just that it really put us in a very difficult situation. It would take us a long time to find enough grants to do that.
Well, we just made our first effort at it, so we'll see. But yeah, you know, we'll just keep plugging away at it, because there's a million, honestly, for the new governor, having watched these transitions before, you'd be amazed how much work it takes just to get this transition to occur. And you'd be surprised how many people tell him no, they don't want to serve because of the state engineer office, for example. They have a hard time getting a guy that wants to be the head or lady of the state water engineer, because it's like trying to solve an impossible problem that goes back for almost at least half a century. So the governor, there's a lot of tough things, but we'll get on and you know, squeaky wheel gets a grease, and we'll see if we can get some grease for Humboldt County and Grass Valley and get that nitrate situation under control. Gotta be somebody with some questions out there. Come on up, don't be afraid.
She started.
Thank you, Louis. Hi, I'm going to give you a little bit of info about our little organization here. Good morning and welcome. Thank you for having us here. My name is Brandy Pettis. I'm the director of the Senior Center here in Humboldt County. So I'm representing our board and the senior citizens of Humboldt County. I did give you a little bit of information about our nonprofit and just kind of a little bit of our mission statement and what currently programs we run here in Humboldt County. The second page that I did do, and this is just something that I would like to bring to your attention, is to review the ADSD, and this is the Aging and Disability Services Division of Nevada, about the grants that they do fund us. We are currently receiving $3.35 per meal at our senior center. With this grant, we can only ask for a donation and contribution towards those meals. So if they can't afford a donation, we go ahead and take that subsidy as a payment. So if you look at, I know I gave you October, November, and December's numbers, but if we just kind of focus in on December, since I'm limited on time here, we served 1,123 meals at our senior center in December. During that month, our average in-house donation per meal was $3.83. That's what people bring to us to donate. The average cost per meal in-house is $14.33. That's not counting our operation. That's just the meal. After our ADSD subsidy of $3.35, the average donation, we lost $7.15 per meal, again, not counting operation. So that puts our center meals at a total loss of $8,000, and then we also do delivery meals. So we do homebound delivery meals to our seniors here locally. Again, only asking for donation. They do give us a little bit more. They do give us $3.80 per meal for those deliveries. So our average donation in December, if you look, we delivered 1,121 meals in December. Our average donation for homebound was $3.10. That's what some people give us for their personal donation. With this subsidy, so what looks like our average cost. So our average cost for the meals delivered was $14.84. So with this subsidy of $3.80, and then the amount that we received for the donation, we lost $8.74 per meal. We delivered to about 60 homebound clients here locally. So putting our homebound loss at $9,797. Together, both programs, in the meal program, we lost $17,826 in meals alone in December. So what I'm asking is that, well, ultimately, we do get the $3.35 per meal and then the $3.80 for our homebound delivery meals. It's the ADSD grant really does support the delivery program. If you can imagine, that's a huge thing here for our seniors. Based on the numbers, so like in December, and I know you guys can review October and November, but it's a small percent, a very small percent of costs. I mean, maybe their coffee and a few drinks, crackers for their soup. That's about what it covers. So what I'm asking, and even if we didn't get that donation, if we didn't get the ADSD grant, which is not an option for us because that grant does drive our delivery service, if we didn't, we would be charging probably about $10 per meal in-house. Again, that doesn't cover that, but it's a good amount in what we charge most people if they're under 60. Our home deliveries would be 15 more if we didn't have that grant, and we would see a lot more seniors in our community hungry and isolated because it wouldn't be a budgeted meal for them. So what I would ask is that you guys look at that ADSD funding for especially senior centers that aren't governed by a city or a county like us. We're one of 2 in the state. So Elko is covered by city or county. I'm not exactly sure which one they're covered under, but they also get this grant, but they're covered under an umbrella. We solely are funds, donations, fundraiser. We get a tax write-off or is it a tax override, I believe, from the Humboldt County, which covers a great portion of our operation only. But yeah, that's it. That's all we get.
Where's the other, you said you're one of 2. Do you know what?
I have asked.
Elko.
Do you know the other
Oh,
one was?
no, she said Elko's covered.
No, I'm not sure what the other one is.
I was just curious.
I know Battle Mountain doesn't have the ADSD grant. They only just charge a flat rate for their meals, but they're also a smaller community of people that they're not serving, and they don't do the meal delivery service as well.
Now, you guys been around since '74. Has that ADSC grant been
The
until
ADS,
recently?
the
Always been there?
ADSD grant was issued, I believe, in 2012. We got the $3.35, which was a 15-cent increase this fiscal year. 15 cents.
You can cover inflation.
Exactly.
Now, what is your total budget? I mean, what do you need? Because I'm gonna.
So we asked-
Besides the government, we also have some mines that often want to,
Right.
do something and for PR.
Right.
Frankly.
So
You guys approach
prior
the mines?
to me, the director was with the senior center for about 12 years, I believe. And I'm new to the senior center. I just came on board in August. But what we had asked for in June, and I was a board member prior and volunteered since 2012, but been involved in the senior center a bit. But what we asked initially from ADSD for the grant was $74,000 for the fiscal year. We ended up getting granted 32
At 74, would you be fully funded?
for the meals. Yes.
Well, you're getting close at least, huh?
Yep. Absolutely.
So you guys are well under 100K a year then, probably in total need?
Yes.
Wow, it's all new to me, so I'm gonna look into it. But one thing I will talk to some of the mining folks, because I know mining's pretty sensitive about some of these issues. And if you have hungry seniors in a mining-dominated community, it sure wouldn't hurt them any to make a nice public donation to your program and help feed needy senior citizens.
So I did actually go to NGM, which is one of our local ones, and my husband also works for. They did give us a $5,000. It was a kind of a gift for December, which was very nice to help with our holiday meal service. So that was great. So I have asked. We just haven't asked for a lot. So hey, when you get that property.
She's looking at you, Tim. We'll be talking. Let's see, they just
I
give
was
$700
actually
million
looking at
down
Lewis.
here, and you guys are supposed to get.
Yeah, give me some of that. Undisclosed property. That's all I have. I just thank you for your time and consideration for our seniors here in Humboldt County.
Well, thank you for all you do.
Thank you.
Don't be shy, come on. Morning.
Thank you for coming to town today, I sure appreciate it. What I wanted to ask about.
You're still a commissioner, aren't you?
Yes, I'm Ken Tipton, just for the record. I want to ask about your BDR 713, which is the Assembly Committee Growth and Infrastructure, revises the provision for roads and highways and and I think it was $2.7 billion over 5 years for that. And I wanted to know, is that money directed more at Washoe and Clark counties, or is it for rural counties as well? And the reason I'm asking is we have a pretty big problem with 95, Highway 95 going north. And if we do have the lithium Nevada mine open up, it's just gonna be compounded. And I just wanted to make sure you folks were aware of that. It's a dangerous situation now, and it's gonna become extremely dangerous.
I've never served on growth and infrastructure, the committee. I am this time, so that will become an issue. I'm not familiar with the BDR. I don't know how they divvy up that pie. I would suspect the bulk of it will frankly go to Clark and Washoe, but there'll be a chunk of it for rurals, always has been, because you guys may have small populations, you've got a lot of paved roads. So we'll look into that. I don't know the answer at the moment, Commissioner, but we'll hopefully get some answers and see what we can do about that section of 95. You're talking from Winnemucca to basically where we're at.
Well, it'd be from Winnemucca to McDermott, because you'll have a population from McDermott
Working at the mine.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, we'll certainly look into it. It's all I can promise you at this point. I don't know the answers to that one.
And just so you know, I don't serve on growth and infrastructure. I haven't, and I'm not on the committee this time. Just for your information, I serve on education, judiciary, and natural resources. But I think Assemblywoman here, she does, and Ira will be. I can also let you know just too that a lot of times when we see these BDRs, we're seeing them like you are. They're kind of vague. They don't go into a lot yet, but certainly by the time they get to committee, they will. So.
And I am on growth and infrastructure, so I have your name, Mr. Tipton, and when we start to talk about this, I will definitely ask that question. One of the things, I don't know how things work up here, so let me just back up. I worked for 26 years at the Regional Transportation Commission in Southern Nevada, so I have a little bit of experience in work funding for that area. One of the things that I saw during that work was the requirement that people who are doing these large projects do some work improvement. And so I don't know if that's going to be discussed locally, but you might want to consider it, and you might want to talk to some of the folks down south in Southern Nevada and ask them how they have worked some of those things out, so that when someone is doing a huge project and it's going to abut or be affected, the local road, that we ask whoever that developer is to make some type of a contribution. So something to consider. I don't know how I don't want to speak out of turn, but I will tell you that in my community, one of the things that's always been of a concern to me is that we give our state dollars, and sometimes we don't ask for what we need in order for that to work well in our communities. Nevada's a beautiful place. Sometimes I think she's a beautiful woman who doesn't realize how beautiful she is, and we're so happy that people come here, they want to do business here, and we forget to ask for what we need. And so I would encourage you to talk to folks in this community who are working with these big, the lithium folks. What about this road here? You're gonna be bringing in trucks. It needs maintenance, or it needs something. We can do our part from a state level. Don't be afraid to ask. Your community is worth it, and we should not be afraid to ask.
Thank you. Here I have one other I wanted to bring up that caught my attention going through. I think it's SB 64 that has to do with a commission appointment to the school board. And I wanted to know where that's coming from. It just seemed really odd to me, and if someone could answer that.
I serve on education, and I did serve on the education interim committee. That bill we had last session, it was actually the speaker's bill. It didn't go anywhere. So what it did though, is they turned it in, it died, and then they kind of brought it back and attached it to the mining tax bill, that there would be a study done about the idea of doing a hybrid, where you have some school boards are appointed and the others are elected. I was against the bill at the get-go. I had a lot of concerns with it, and I will give credit to the speaker. He really listened, he considered those concerns. The bill didn't go anywhere, but then it came back as a study in the interim. And so we had many meetings talking about other areas that have tried this. And in all honesty, at the end of the interim, which we had our last meeting in September, we still hadn't gotten there. There was not a consensus. So it's really essentially, unless you've heard differently, it's dead on arrival. I don't think it's gonna go anywhere this session. And the idea, at least from my point of view, is the best government is the government that's closest to the people, and you don't get any closer to the people than county commissions, city councils, and school boards, and that needs to be an elected position. You know, one of the arguments made was, well, you're dealing with billions of dollars in budgets, and maybe you need somebody who's a professional, so to speak. In the state legislature, we have an $11 billion budget coming up. And last session and previous sessions, and she was very, very good at what she did. The head of Ways and Means was a waitress, and she was phenomenal at her job as chair of Ways and Means. So, frankly speaking, personally, it's not a model I would like to see us go to, and from the feedback we've gotten, it's not going there. It will continue to be elected. Full school boards will be elected.
Perfect, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Deborah Lyon. I've lived out on Highway 95 for 37 years. There has also been 2 fatal wrecks already last year. It scares me because we have the potato plants out on 95 and those big trucks that are hauling all those potatoes. You know, sometimes it's unbearable. But I just want to let you guys know that I've been out there. I was really blessed that my parents and my grandmother gave each of us that graduated from high school 10 acres. When I married my husband, little over 42 years ago, we worked our butts on our property. My grandmother paid for the surveyor to come out and survey the property, make sure we had our corner posts all correct and everything else. And then later on, my dad gave us the river bottom, which is a little Humboldt. And it's like, come on. There's been one little 16-year-old girl that got killed out there. 16 years old. And where's the worst part of the wreck? Many years ago, my husband and our oldest 8-year-old daughter was in a very terrible wreck. This guy was in a little Datsun B210. Basically, that B210 was this long, smashed it like in half, and the guy died in that wreck. But this is why I'm bringing up my concerns with Highway 95 and stuff like that. So things need to be getting done because there's been 2 more fatal wrecks not far from each other. And it's usually when you come up the hill as you're going towards the dump and coming back from the dump is where people try and pass because they can't see up that hill. And that's where basically 2 wrecks have been. So that's my concern, and I thought I'd bring it up after Mr. Tipton brought the Highway 95 thing up. So that's one of my concerns on that one. Thank you.
Thank you for taking the time.
Thank you. No,
to let us know.
we're actually familiar with what's going on there, and I don't know what will happen, but I think you're gonna have, if nothing else, where you're describing, you can put in a passing lane. But again, you gotta have the money to do it, and so that's where we're working in that direction.
2 passing lanes going towards McDermott.
Uh-huh.
And there is only one passing lane, way past, like over by, before Sand Pass Road and stuff like that. And it just comes back into a single lane.
Mhm. Well, just so you know, my dad was killed at Button Point in a car accident back in 2002. Hit black ice, so yeah. Things do happen and we'll try to minimize.
Yeah, Button Point used to be worse than what it was when I started getting my driver's license, because we had a driving teacher that would take us out in a vehicle and make us drive, because it used to be a really steep curve.
It wasn't that long ago, but yeah, so yeah, believe me, I'm sensitive to highway accidents. And I know from talking to the mining people, they're very sensitive about some of these issues too. So if they want to get any support from the county commission and all that, one of the things I'm sure they're going to work on is figuring out a solution. That you already have substantial truck traffic. Do the potato farmers still use that
Yeah,
extensively?
they still use 95 when the.
That harvest window is what,
Yeah.
just barely, that's like what,
Yeah.
6 weeks, 2 months
Yeah,
or so?
something like that.
Okay. We'll do what we can. I know
Yeah,
that, I know
appreciate it.
they're working on it.
Thank you for
Where exactly is your property?
It's off of Lambert Drive. In fact, I got to name my street because it was a private road. When you come off of Lambert Drive, it's up the hill and to the right.
Well, part of it's the Little Humboldt drainage?
Yeah, we have the property right in front of it.
Hmm.
I can remember one year it flooded big time. Before we moved out there, Big Lambert had to have 2 boats on each side of the little Humboldt in order to get from his house to get down to the road.
Well, Gumboot Lake is somewhere right around here, isn't it? Where the Little Humboldt floods?
Yes, it was.
Who knows? All right, I'm getting off on a tangent. My apologies. We'll do what we can.
Okay, thank you for your time.
Hi, my name is Deborah Day. Thank you for coming. I don't know if this has anything to do with your bills or whatnot, but I did have a couple questions. You were just talking about the water issue we were having here, lack of water. My biggest concerns are, yet we have such a bad water, problem, yet we let a trout farm come in here that's gonna use millions of gallons of water in the middle of the desert. No, I mean, a trout farm in the middle of the desert, we're gonna allocate all their water to them. And we also are gonna allocate millions of gallons of water to the mines. So we're over allocated now, but we can go ahead and just give them our water because I guess they have, I don't know. That bothers me because what I heard you guys say is that we're lacking in water to where Las Vegas can't even grow greenery in their front yards. But yet we're gonna give these people all this for what? And if it's true, what I've been hearing is the allocation of water in that Borgata area will be depleted within 4 to 5 years because we're already over allocated. But yet we're gonna let this mine come in and take all the water out of that whole area and destroy all those farmers. To me, we have a bigger problem here that is going on, and I'm really, that bothers me a lot, that we have such a bad problem with water, but yet we're gonna, like you said, the people that have the money, that have the water rights will give it to the people that they wanna give it to, and the whole thing is an issue with me. My other question I have to you guys, back on the road thing, 95, the only 2 directions that mine can go is 95 Reinhardt Road and down through the middle of our town. Well, Reinhardt floods. If we get a wet winter, that floods. So I've read some of their documents, and there will be, we were told a couple weeks ago that there will only be 39 trucks. Well, I read their own documents, and their own documents say there will be 160 plus trucks one way. So if that means they're going to and from, that's 320 trucks coming from the lithium mine. That means that road on Highway 95 should be double lanes, both sides, going in and out if you're gonna do it. And then there has to be another on-ramp to go into the transfer station, which is another whole issue. They're putting in with a bunch of chemicals to be processed, right? I mean, it's gonna be off there, and if any chemical spills, there's a lot of people that live there. I live there, and I'm totally against it. I just hope people here understand that we're in a big one. This is a big fight, and we're the little guys. This community is the little guys. We're fighting the state, the federal government, lithium mine, and we need help, a lot of it, because there's a lot of people here. Don't get me wrong, I'm not against mines. The gold mines, they've been here forever. I've seen some documentation on what they've done in Africa, Australia. It's almost like strip mining. They're gonna, yeah. It's massive and it's dangerous what they're doing here. And I think it's a very, very bad thing that we got going on here. Thanks.
Thank you.
Come on up, there's two chairs.
Thank you, Representative. Happy to have you here. It's an honor. So Nevada has been forward-leaning with respect to legislation that allows us to be friendly towards technological innovation. And I'm thinking about like the blockchain legislation a few sessions ago, and also the autonomous vehicle testing legislation. I ask you to continue this trend by passing legislation that would allow for digital ID cards. So, you know, in your wallet, you can have your driver's license. So we don't fall behind Arizona and Maryland, and a couple states are already piloting such programs. And I know, especially with us being a tourist destination, in many of our communities, Tahoe, Las Vegas, rural Nevada for hunting, that this would just be one more way for us to be welcoming and let everybody know that we are a leader in technology innovation. The other item here is I would ask you to, consider removing or passing legislation to remove any red tape regarding broadband development. We've seen the federal government put out new broadband maps. I can tell you that it's leading our broadband action committee here. It's been very frustrating because we don't feel as though the needs of the communities are being heard by the FCC or the federal government. When they put out new maps, they didn't take any input from us. The companies, internet service providers were able to tell the federal government where exactly service is. And I can tell you that a lot of where they claim that service is for broadband is not accurate. And so that just creates more problems for us. So when that funding comes down for the BEAD program, we're not gonna be able to apply or funding to hit those areas that need service. We're going to be very limited. And so it's been a kind of a frustrating process. So the state can do anything at the state level for us to be able to, maybe some of you mentioned those COVID funding and some of that can go towards broadband. That sure would be great. Especially during COVID, we saw how that impacted the rural communities a lot more because, we were very limited on the speeds that we have. And in Winnemucca, if you look at an actual map of where there's service, it's a patchwork. And it just really hurts our residents. And I don't want to say an unfair advantage, but it really holds us back. And it affects our youth, and it just has wider implications. So there's that. And also another one would be the fair taxation of electric vehicles. So right now, their charging is not being taxed. So that's kind of unfair for us to drive vehicles with combustible engines. We're taxed, so I asked for, I know that the legislature has been working on this with some of their committees, but to create a fair model for when electric vehicles are charged, that there is a tax so that that revenue can go towards improving roads. I know that that's always a big item every legislative session, infrastructure. And there's a lot of money left on the table by not taxing charging electric vehicles. So if we could get a model in place and have that going, and maybe it needs to be a national standard, I don't know, or that to be tracked. But, you know, a lot of tourists do use our roads, you know, coming in from California or, you know, Northern California or Southern California into our areas. So it would just be nice to know that it's an equal playing field and that we're not caring for those individuals using electric vehicles. So thank you.
Just got hit a bunch of.
He was good, that was good.
The broadband thing, last night the governor's speech, what do you say, $450
Yeah,
million?
did you hear, I don't know if you heard that, but the governor.
Yeah, the governor,
proposed this.
he's all over that one.
I think it was 400 million, but let me ask this question. How many of you use Starlink out here? And how has your service been?
Better.
It's been fabulous. So that's what I'm trying to understand is, why are we worrying about the carriers dictating to us where we have service when you got the sky and I use it and it changed our lives? So I'm just wondering for the municipalities, the counties, if you found that, maybe you don't have a problem with your broadband when you're right here in town, but I just think rather than waiting, I mean, for those who can afford it, it is expensive, or is there some way that the municipalities can look at investing in that? I know some of the tribes have come with that issue, and I talked to them about perhaps the money could go toward providing that service on the reservations for the tribal members. So anyway, that issue, and then, yeah, that fair taxation on charging of vehicles. I bet we visit that this session. I haven't heard of a specific bill yet. We know that the electric vehicles, some of them in particular, Tesla cars, they're very heavy and they are a little bit harder on the roads, just like we have a different rate for the big semi-trucks, right? So, very good points.
But that's an interesting one. The governor is committed to no new taxes, okay? And as Republicans in that same party, but I totally support everybody here that drives a gasoline or diesel powered vehicle, you're paying for the highway. And we just drove over with a hybrid car, and the electric portion of it that we used, no tax, right? And that absolutely is it. So you're basically subsidizing all of that. That's what you understand very well. However, to get to the correct formula for that, should it be based on how much electricity you use, miles you drive, registration? That's where it gets more complicated. But just so you know, that is one, but it's also one that as legislators we're trying to dodge occasionally. But I agree with you 100%. We've been pushing that behind the scenes. We've got to come up with something. It's not fair. But you'd be surprised how many people like, oh, you can't tax, you know, my electric car. It's like, well, wait a minute. Everybody else should have to subsidize your use of the roads. You should pay your fair share as well. But coming up with the correct formula, that's a little tough.
That's why, like you said the word fair, so I really.
Yes.
It's unfair if you're not paying a nickel.
Our infrastructure per se.
Well, this is why this exchange of information is so important. During COVID, the community that I represent and communities around it suffered greatly because we have a dearth of broadband in an urban community. That when you have old communities that are already established, they don't have the broadband in the ground. And so we are struggling, and I understand exactly where you're coming from, and I believe that Cameron Miller, who is an assemblyman in an area near me, brought a bill last time, and I'm sure there's going to be more of that. We are very sensitive to that. I am extremely sensitive. We had children sitting out in front of McDonald's with a school bus that was a broadband broadcaster for them to be able to have broadband because all their work went. I mean, I don't have really proper words to say how that made me feel. When I'd see a kid sitting crisscross on concrete because they had to sit with the bus and it's been waiting for the school bus to come by to broadcast for them. So these are things that we have in common, and I think that we have to work for solutions that help everybody. So I know that there's been legislation passed. I would love to get you in contact with somebody from Growth and Infrastructure to talk about where that is from last session and where it's going this session. Another thing that I've seen in the urban area when I worked at the RTC is asking anytime someone is doing a public works project for them to lay those wires in the ground while the trenches are open, so that you're not having cuts in your streets, but that it saves them money because you're already doing an infrastructure project to allow them to put the cables in there on your behalf. So I think it's a combination of what we can do as government, but also, again, as the beautiful state of Nevada, who should have fabulous things, that when people come here and they want to do new stuff and use our infrastructure, that they are also contributing to what we need. So keep that in mind. Know something's happening. If there's any possibility with your public works folks, have those conversations. It's much easier to lay the wire when the ground is open instead of trying to wait later and then we go, oh my God, you know. So I'll do my best. If you, I don't think I have any card, but I'll take yours. Let's talk about it. Let's see what growth and infrastructure is going to do. And if someone's carrying something, let's get on Zoom and talk about your needs.
Absolutely.
Okay?
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Hi, I'm Tom Haas, I'm Humboldt County Commissioner. Thank you very much for being here. Appreciate what you guys have brought to us. Let's talk a little water. You've got water right there. It was full when you started and it's half full now. What are you gonna do when that gets
Run down
empty?
the bathroom.
Well, yes, you're gonna get rid of it, but then we're gonna go, after you get done drinking that, want some more water, what are you gonna do? You're gonna get up and get another one. I'm a representative for Humboldt County for Central Nevada Water Authority. We have one authority here, one down there. I've talked to the state engineer about this and a couple different times. We don't have any water. And all we're doing is creating a civil war within Nevada, you know, and we're gonna get the attorneys involved in it. And there was, at the last meeting, there's some people from the UNR that are putting together they have 6, 8 professors up there on the wall, and they want money to do a study on the water in Nevada. We've already got the studies done. I mean, all our basins up here, you know, everything's done, everything is accounted for. And we're so over-allotted, we don't have any water left. So you watch, for the last 5 years I've been watching it, and you know, back east in areas, they get a lot of water, and they're flooding. What's wrong with dumping that water into the Colorado? You've got the Colorado River brings the water to us. You're not taking away from the people. You're not taking their allotted acreages or anything else. You're just taking the overburden. And you dump it in there, you bring it out here and you know, on the Colorado. Now, he's a young man, okay, and he's trying very, very hard. And he's saddled with something that I don't think I want, as you well know. So he threw up his hands. He says, well, we've heard of grandiose things. Well, China, for instance, just moved water from one edge of China to the other. And, you know, we've done water, we've done dams, we've done pipelines, we've done, you know, so all we'd have to do is get it into the Colorado. You know, we don't have to come all the way to Nevada and Arizona and California and Utah. It'll be done for us. So it's something that we might look at. You know, the study that they're talking about, they've got $1 million now, they're getting it started. They want a 5-year study and they want $15 million to tell us what to do about the water when we don't have it. So, and that's the bottom line. I mean, that's where it's at. So, anyway, thank you again for coming up. Very nice to meet all of you. And I appreciate all the conservancy, you know, everything that you guys have done. We've done the same thing here. just gotta, you know, and it's not getting any better, so, you know, we're gonna have to look at outside sources, so, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Senator, Assemblywoman, I'm Jesse Hill, County Commissioner. I'm just finishing my first term, or halfway through. I appreciate you bringing her down here. That goes a long ways with me, to try to find common ground. I know we all have different views, and we see things from completely different spectrums, but when you walk in somebody's shoes, or you go visit their district, you get an appreciation for what the folks are going through, so that's huge to me. I hope we do more of that. I want to touch on Abel's, I sit on the Broadband Commission also. I think you hit it on the head. I think we're in an age right now where we're probably beyond wires, you know, or darn close to beyond wires, where we're talking about infrastructure and putting all this fiber in the ground, but maybe we should be concentrating on what's in the air and how we can bring that to everybody, you know. And that counts for all of our very rural people, our ranchers, our tribes, our places where it doesn't make sense to bring wires to. Let's get more satellites in the air, and let's get them good broadband. The other thing I wanted to touch on is mental health. We're not immune here, you know. I think in the last 3 to 4 or 5 years, it's just rampant. The amount of self-inflicted deaths that I've seen or been close to is mind-boggling. So as you go into your sessions and whatnot, don't think that we're immune here. I think if anything, we're probably per capita worse off than some of the big cities because of where we're at and the resources that we have available. So I wish I knew the answer to that. I don't, but just think about us, and you know, we struggle here with the same stuff. And if there's any support you can throw our way, that would be greatly appreciated.
What the governor in his speech last night,
Yes.
he
Can you
said-
tell we've been married for 42 years? I literally was gonna say, did the governor say that he had some money set aside in the budget for mental health? And he addressed rurals as well. Our daughter is a mental health professional, she's a licensed marriage family therapist, and certainly some of the things that she can share with us, of course, anonymously. And yet, what I have seen as a legislator, in 2019, my first session, I came away from that session after hearing multiple testimonies in judiciary and in education, and from the courts. I realize we are in a mental health crisis in this state, and it's just gotten worse. The amount of resources we have, and I never really wanted to believe schools had that. You know, schools are supposed to be there to teach our kids, and as I've talked with school district officials, we know now schools are in the business of mental health, and that's a really huge responsibility to think that our schools have to manage that as well. So while I completely can feel and understand the depth of the weight that I think all of us probably feel living in this day and age, we're just gonna have to attack it head on, and I'm hoping those resources will get there. That's what we'll try to help shepherd. One of the hardest things at the legislature is everybody comes there with a need, and you almost begin to feel so absolutely overwhelmed, like, how do I make that decision about who gets what and who doesn't get what? Because every vote is either yes to something and no to something else. But I will tell you personally, mental health is at the top for me, and I think our state is seeing that, and those that have a lot more power and authority over decisions than I do. I'm in the minority party, but I think that is a bipartisan issue for sure. So I can only hope that with the governor allocating some money in his budget, he's got to get that budget through this legislature, and there'll be a lot of finagling. But I do think on that one, on the mental health side, that's going to hopefully be a very bipartisan ask.
Yeah, my wife's also been a school teacher for about 23 years now, and so I hear about it.
God bless her.
I hear about it daily, and a very real struggle for her compared to where she started to what she does today.
thing about that is, you know, the governor, because he was sheriff in Clark County, a lot of mental health issues spill over the criminal justice system. He's very aware of that. And so that's why I think he has an enhanced interest in funding some of those things.
Yeah,
And that's been the answer, like she says, you know, you're down there and everybody has a need when they come to the legislature and it's all financial, and then you're divvying up a relatively modest pot. Right now the pot's bigger than it's been ever in months since I've been in the legislature, so I think for change we'll be able to see, no, I can probably get the nitrate situation in Grass Valley and the mental health issues across the state.
Yeah, and I listened to his speech last night, and very exciting is that we need to hold people accountable. We need to have standards, and we need to hold people accountable, and I really truly believe that everybody wants to be held accountable. Somewhere on deep down on the inside, they want to be held accountable for something, and I think that would go a long ways with helping things out.
Jesse, I'd just like to say to you that, again, we are on the same page on an issue. It is huge. We saw mental health issues exacerbated during the schools, in the schools, with our kids not being, we didn't realize how much mental health work teachers were doing with our children until they were not there.
Right.
When they were at home, then we got to see firsthand. I live in an area where there's lots of social services are offered in our community. We have a lot of homelessness, a lot of which is driven by the lack of access to mental health services. So I look at it this way, you know, do we want to deal with the children so they don't get there? Or are we always just throwing money at a problem, right? What about getting to the source? And the source of it is our kids are struggling right now. And if we don't want them to end up on the street and then in jail and then in prison, right? And how do we tackle it? We get it at the core of the issue, which is in education. We're with them every day. Someone came and did a presentation and said that we have in Clark County. Oh, I went to a presentation a couple days ago. One social worker right now for like 8,000 students.
Wow. I think you hit something on the head there. I think the 2 years during COVID, I think that they were sent homeward, that they were isolated. I think we did lose a lot of ground. I think that they weren't getting that daily interaction with those teachers that were doing more than we thought they were doing. So.
Exactly. And tell your wife thank you.
Yeah. Thanks.
It's a hard job. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm actually going to follow up with Commissioner Hill. I'm Pauline Sala. I'm the Juvenile Services Director here and also the chair of our Humboldt Connections Suicide Prevention Task Force. So I think that we have a lot of amazing people in this community who are all working for the same goal. I'll tell you, one of our struggles is that we actually have issues with being able to keep our homegrown students and people who want to become marriage and family therapists, licensed clinical social workers, psychologists, any of those things, because although Juvenile Services is an approved site for bachelor's and master's level social workers and human development students, we cannot become approved for licensed clinical social work internships because we don't have a full-time mental health professional on site. Even though some of our staff is licensed alcohol and drug counselors, we have an applied behavioral analysis master level staff. If we don't have a full-time mental health clinician on site, we can't have interns who are trying to get their clinical hours at our agency. Even though we provide all different types of services, we actually are the first in the state to remodel half of our juvenile detention center to become a non-secure transitional living center. Because of the reform we went through, we didn't need all those cells, but what we needed is a safe place for our kids to live while they practice their skills in the community. We offer all types of on-site programming, and I have to send our interns away who complete their degree, sometimes to another state to get their hours approved, or to Reno, or to a different community when they want to stay here and provide services to our community members. It seems like it's easier to do psychological, clinical internship hours than licensed clinical social workers. And that's just not appropriate for our smaller communities, especially after COVID, where everything went virtual. We should be able to provide on-site supervision and structure for our interns, and then have them be able to meet with a licensed clinical social worker who's approved to do supervision clinically, virtually. If not, we're losing our own community members who want to stay and help our community. And so it's been extremely frustrating. We've already lost 2 that actually went out of state to get their clinical hours, and hopefully will come back to us to provide direct service, but we don't know that. So I know that last session we had a lot with the licensure and trying to figure that out. It's not working for the rurals because we just don't have the level of licensed clinical clinicians that can supervise more than 1 or 2 interns. So any support with that, we would love that.
Question, is that, the choke point you're talking about, is that a state law or is that a regulatory?
It's an occupational licensing.
It's an occupational
Did
licensing.
you hear about the Governor Lombardo's new executive order he said, this is in the executive order. I'm not sure.
I did hear that. I was hoping that does include some of the clinical licenses.
So that's what we need to dial in then, right? The question is, does it include the clinical? I think it does, but clinical, give you the terminology again?
So, licensed clinical social worker,
Clinical social work for
the
on-site.
on-site supervision.
Are you familiar with this?
Just a little bit, because I do believe, I sit on judiciary, and I do believe that during the interim over the summer, because now you're making my small brain click. Somebody gave a presentation on this, so I think this is being addressed. I've got your name, Pauline Sella.
Sala, S-A-L-L-A.
Almost ahead of you, almost. And I will go back and check and see where this is, and see if someone's carrying something, but this was discussed during the interim with the emphasis on allowing virtual supervision. So someone is talking your language.
Okay.
So hold tight, hopefully we'll have some good news for you.
Okay, I have 4 more months of my master level intern right now, and then she'll be ready to go into clinical supervision, and I just don't want to lose her from our community because we can't figure something out.
Right, and we serve our communities better because this is our community.
That's right, and you know, when you want to come back to your community and provide those direct services, it's absolutely unacceptable to me that we are telling people to leave our community to get a license. That is just unacceptable to me, and it should be for our community, because clearly we need the services for mental health, we need substance use disorder treatment, and who's better to do that than we are here, and that's where we need to keep it.
Sounds like there's some hope on the horizon.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, Senator and Assemblywomen.
Good morning.
Ronnie's on the commission?
Yes, Ron Cherry, County Commissioner. Especially Assemblywoman Armstrong, I'm so pleased to see a Southern legislator come up here to see what the world is like on the other side of the state. So thank you for coming.
Ron, is that your hat sitting up there?
It is.
I thought I recognized it. How good is that? I saw that hat. I said, I bet you that's Jerry's hat.
Are you related to the cherries and that's out?
No,
It's,
not that I know of.
it's C-H-E-R-I?
No, C-E-R-R-I.
C-E-R.
Italian name. I want to speak to you today about lithium. I live up north 40 miles. in the Quinn River Valley where the proposed Thacker lithium mine is going in. Now, we have a federal government and a state that all supports the development of lithium. The community up where I live supports that too. We believe in our mineral independence, and as a nation, we need to get there. That's not, I'm not here to oppose that. But we're a community up there of about 250 people. When this mine is in full production, it will, or when it's in full development, while they're building it, there'll be 1,000 people coming to that community. During operation, there'll be 300. So you're going to see the community's population more than double, and it's not ready for it. We want it there. You know, some people do, some people don't. When we heard about the project, when the mines come in, they're required by BLM most times to do their own studies and gather the science to move forward with approval of an EIS. And BLM simply doesn't do that. They don't have the staffing to do it. So they rely on the mining companies to do their studies, then they review those studies, which is okay, I guess. We as a community, in some cases, we're like water, air quality, want to make sure those studies were done correctly and that it's our quality of life. Our children will be breathing that air, drinking that water. We're done right, and that their studies are correct. We don't have the wherewithal in these communities to do our own studies, to get a third-party review of these. I guess I'm not really sure what my ask here is, other than we're going to see more of this happening. Evidently, Nevada is the lithium capital of the world. I don't know, you're going to see more of these going, and you're going to see them disrupt these smaller communities. And I would like to see there be a fund created that the communities can apply for. I mean, right now you collect net proceeds and those monies go for various things. Maybe there could be a fund created that communities could apply for to use for third-party reviews of some of these studies or their concerns, to look at some of their concerns. I realize, mining is a huge deal for us up north here. They are what these communities rely on for, employment, revenues, and so it's not anti-mining. We just want to make sure that going forward, we're all, when the mine's gone, we're all going to have a place to still, our children to live and continue to ranch or whatever else they want to do. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
You basically want us to get funding, some type of a thing that the rural communities, small communities could double check the stats, basically.
Yeah, state maybe could create a fund, and these communities could apply for some funding for third-party reviews, some studies they might not.
And fund it from a portion of the proceeds, minimum tax, something like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It doesn't make sense, because when you have mining companies to do their own studies, might be a little biased.
Well, and I'm going to give them the mining, Nevada Lithium, which is done up there, has offered to help as well. They've offered to give the community some money to do this. It's a gray area. Can you take money from a mining company to look at what the mining company is doing and feel like, and tell the community that there's no strings attached here? It's difficult. They've helped with this is going to come some transportation issues with the school. The mine has agreed to move the school, so they're trying to be good neighbors. Okay, there's those transportation issues right there where they'll be turning towards the mine. There's there's no turn lanes. And if you got, at full production, there's gonna be 150 trucks using that, and it's gonna be a real safety hazard. They've agreed to improve that turn lane. So it's not about them not doing their share, but there's still questions out there that you know, there's water issues. That's all agriculture up there. What is the mine gonna do as far as affecting the water in that area? Just a third-party review of that would help in everybody's minds.
Thank you. Uh-oh, she brought a box for us, like, I'm just kidding.
I didn't bring you guys out. My name's Christina Kennis, and actually I'll probably be following you guys throughout the day, but I'll try to stay on top of where we're at. The lithium mine's been mentioned a lot here, and I live in the county, and a lot of what's been going on here, very little information has actually made it to people. And everyone's very hesitant to come out against the lithium mine, because we're a mining community. We are very much gold medal mining community. These lithium mines are a whole nother ballgame. So everyone here is still really learning about what's going on, how is this gonna happen, what's the chemicals, what's the effect. Because we're pretty much used to what goes on now. But the more research I've done and the more I've looked into it, it is a really big difference between the mines we have and the lithium mines. And frankly, some of the stuff that's been going on has been, they've been here talking to some of our local politicians for years. Whereas some of the people living in these communities don't hear about what their plan is until it's right upon us. And even then, it's not being discussed publicly. I can tell you, like, I don't know, you guys live in Sparks, so I don't know if you read this paper to get an idea of what's going on out here. So this is about the last city council meeting, just to let you know. And this is about the transloading terminal that they want to put in. And this article actually has quite a bit of inaccuracies and is, from what I can tell, very biased. And I'm worried about how the information is actually getting to our community and the inaccuracies. And we're a small community, so frankly, rumors go a long way. A long way. And then they get repeated, and the misinformation out there gets taken as fact. And that's a really big concern. So I'm coming to you because I live less than half a mile. It's basically my backyard, this transloading facility they want to put in at the airport. So where I live, me and my husband, we've been raising 4 kids there. We just got more adjacent land, putting on a home for my husband's oldest boy. He's getting married. I'm hoping to have grandbabies right next door. So when I say that I am very invested and interested in what they are doing, and I have asthma, by the way, and my son has asthma, and they sure put on a really good show, the lithium mines, with what they tell us they're going to do. The reality is very different. And everybody's listening to them and believing them. And it's very frustrating. So this transloading facility is, it's gonna be going into the county, their plan. It's property owned by the city. There are a lot of concerns about the lithium mine, but this is information that's just now coming out about this transloading facility, and it is because they need the molten sulfur. So they are looking at putting a railroad spur right at the end of the runway at the airport for chemicals, for stuff that is very highly regulated, very close to my home. And they're really what they're saying. Like, I knew that they wanted to put this in near the airport over a year ago. And I tried researching and I tried finding the information. And just now in the last couple of weeks have I gotten the maps that shows it right out my backyard. Right there. I have, just to give you an idea, we have about 10 acres. I have livestock. We really enjoy, you know, our rural. My husband's actually, he's from here, his family's from here. We're very close to, he's one of 9 children. His parents have a farm. We're very close to the farm where a lot of his siblings live. There's big family. I don't really have the option to move away because I love my husband and his whole family's here. And this is where we are rooted. And this is where our children are being rooted. And to give you an idea, a lot of these chemicals and what they've been planning on doing at the transloading site, I can't find any information on anything like it near homes like they're planning on doing. And I feel like there's nobody looking out for us. Like, where's the protections? There's a certain amount of air pollution that they can do with these transloading facilities. They're gonna have molten sulfur. And then we're used to, out in rural areas, little annoyances that come and go. Everything that this lithium mine is doing is 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, year round. So any of the pollution, anything that spills or anything goes into the ground, this is it. You can't go back once you do this. And actually most of our neighbors still don't know about it because we're trying to get the word out. We don't have those resources to say, hey, or hey, they're telling you this, but this is what's actually going on. If you do the research, and I mean hours and hours of research online, and it's very frustrating. We have no way to test our air quality here. I'm sure down like in Vegas and stuff, you're used to, you know, paying attention to the air quality, the different things. If you have asthma, you're that much more sensitive to it. Just to give you an idea, when there's like a big fire, I have my back door especially, I have to go tape it off. I can't go outside. I can end up really, really, really sick. So they're looking at burning sulfur out in my backyard year round. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. And it seems to come down to money. Because frankly, by the way, the airport is to the south of I-80. And so they've talked a couple times today in the meeting about where they're gonna be transporting the number of trucks. They really downplay. Like this article in the newspaper says 39 trucks coming and going a day. Completely inaccurate. They went to the city council meeting and said there's 39 trucks outgoing a day in the phase 1. So I don't know if we're like living in Harry Potter land where they think the trucks just magically reappear back there, but they're coming back and they're coming and going. And it's phase 2 doubles everything. So we're talking about a lot. And this is near the airport. Where a lot of us are zoned either Act 5 or rural ranchette. It's a nice small community out there. But what they're trying to do is gonna like completely change our way of life. Completely change, you know, what's gonna happen to our water, what's gonna happen to our air. And literally, we're just finding out about this now. And they're putting through the proposals and doing all this stuff. But if you look, like we have Cyanco out, which is a whole different story, by the way, from sulfur. So north of I-80, there's multiple rail spurs, there's multiple places that is not near homes. But they're telling us that this is the right fit for the community to put it in our backyard and right next to our airport. And this is what we're dealing with here in the county. And I'm like, people really have no clue what's going on, like at all. And I feel like everybody's coming out, and Lithium Mines has really done a good job. Really coming out, really schmoozing our politicians and working it. because they've got them backing them up in the meetings instead of listening to us. And even the mayor, he was more than happy to explain that he likes the county people because we spend money in the city, which to me is not being part of a community. That's not caring about what's going into people's backyards, what's gonna happen to our children. And like he said, it would be nice to be able to get some actual third-party, non-influenced people to come in and actually see what's going to happen. Because a lot of this stuff is being swept under the rug. It's being sugar-coated for everybody. And it's like they don't expect people to actually do the research and look it up. And it's all there on the internet. You can look up and see what their original plan was to have sulfuric acid going in and out of this transloading facility. That was their original plan. Then they're like, no, we're not. Because they were stopped from doing it. But guess what? If they were allowed to do it, you bet they'd do it in a heartbeat. And we're talking major chemicals. This isn't like Cyanco at all. This is a whole different story. And we have no one looking out for us here, I feel like. Well, I haven't really talked to the county commissioners yet. Hopefully I will. Because frankly, they're probably gonna be the only ones to stop it at this point. But there's a lot of, it's really frustrating as somebody who lives right there. And then the more I learn about the lithium mine and I see what they're doing out there and with the people living in Orovada, because worst case scenario, we're talking about it will decimate the way of life for people out here. And as you can tell, they've talked about multiple lithium mines in Nevada, and we need to get to the root of what's really going on before it's too late, because this stuff is gonna have an impact long after these mines are gone. And this isn't like the gold mines at all. The end result is not gonna be the same. It's so close to strip mining, which isn't even legal. It's just a whole nother ballgame. And they're looking at, they talk about the water. The water is a huge concern because there is no way to protect the water out there. There's going to be stuff going into it that should not be going into the water. And it will not, it's gonna take so many years to make things back to where they think it will be. And we'll be long gone. This is our children, our grandchildren, our great-grandchildren. I mean, this is gonna affect way on. But we talk about trying to fix the water problem and all that, but everybody's kind of head in the sand with, we're gonna pollute some of the water we actually have right now. We're gonna take it from the ranchers. So how are they, I mean, I don't know, how many people have had trouble getting hay or the price of hay lately? I mean, a lot of people get their hay from out in Orovada. What's gonna happen, worst case scenario, if those ranches are decimated and the hay's gone? I mean, like I said, the whole way of life, this is nothing like the gold mines. Nothing like it. It's really frustrating. And I feel like we're just being told a whole bunch of, oh, it's fine, and shush, go away. And yet, we're here, and the more I find out, like I said, I've done a lot of research, and I've only hit the iceberg. Like, there's so much more. And all the lithium products and everything they're planning on selling them, and the majority of the stuff coming from that mine is gonna be going to that transloading facility. Which literally is in people's, like, backyards. I go out at night and I look out my back door, and it's right there. And I think, well, will I be able to even go outside and take care of my livestock? Will I be able to breathe the air without wearing a mask outside? Because when there's fires, a lot of times I end up having to put on a mask because I can't handle. Well, we're talking about the same type of chemicals in the air. When they burn sulfur, it's sulfur dioxide. And there's no plans, they've talked a few times about the infrastructure out here. Are we ready for this? No, not even close. Nowhere near close. Because if there was some sort of an industrial accident over here off the airport, heaven forbid, there's an explosion, there's fire, anything, these are major chemicals. There's no getting around it. There's going to be an influx in the hospital. There's gonna be all sorts of stuff. So can we fly people out if they've got an industrial accident right next to the airport? I mean, nobody's looking at all this stuff. They just see dollar signs. They want a railroad spur at the airport because it's all this money. We have railroad spurs all over the place out here that's not in people's backyards. And if they want a railroad spur that bad, can we not do it with chemicals coming in? It's just, it's mind-boggling the stuff that goes on out here. And people aren't talking about it. And people aren't, they tell us there's meetings going on, but they're not telling us that it's affecting us. Everything is so like, just keep going. They won't, if they don't hear about it, they won't know. I can't tell you how many neighbors I still haven't gotten a hold of that have no clue what's going on. But ranchers that don't know. Because we're a mining community. Because lithium mines has come in and pushed, we're a mining community. This is a lithium mine, this is not a gold mine. This is not a silver mine. This is a whole different ballgame. And Nevada, the whole state of Nevada needs to look into this and wake up and look at the difference between what we have been having here for a long time and what they're looking at doing. Because the end results are gonna be very different from what we're used to. So.
Thank you for taking the time.
Joel Murphy, 42 years, retired miner. So, a couple of comments kind of that I'd like to make and then kind of ask as on a different subject. So obviously the lithium mine issue is got to be pretty big in the local area. I was down in Bullhead City, Arizona, right at Laughlin, opening up a new gold and silver mine. Well, most of this was happening up here, so we put in the Northern Vertex, Golden Vertex mine down there. When I left a year and a half ago, was the biggest gold and silver open pit mine in Arizona. Something pretty proud of. So 42-year career, definitely, I can tell you there's a lot of rules and regulations that goes into this, and I appreciate all the comments people are saying because we feel some of it. I hadn't really stayed up to speed on the topic of all of this, but I've had some research because my neighbors, when it popped up at city council, were like, what's going on? Can you go ask questions and so on and so forth? And it's like, absolutely. Because I know that you don't get to generally just come in and tear the country out in those days of mining, strip mining, and monitor mining and washing down mountains and stuff are mostly gone. Now, one of our commissioners just brought up recently about the BLM. That's been a problem for years. That as the miner, I paid and hired people to do a study to give to the BLM to convince you to let me tear up federal ground. So did we do it well? Yes, absolutely. Florida Canyon, been going for many, many years. I was out there for over 31 of them. That being said, that's a little bit of the fox in charge of the hen house. So what you hear a lot of this is the communication. Some of it, I went to the city council meeting a little bit, little chip on my shoulder, same thing. But you find out as you're sitting there that they were just asking if the city council, who has the land by the airport, is willing to sell, lease, or whatever. So as a company, how much money are you going to put into a huge study, right? And I agree with everybody out there because I live out there as well, not very far from the airport myself. So I would like to see things done well. My point comment on this is lithium is the new gold rush. You see that in the papers and articles all over the web. It's gone up 2,000% in cost. Our own government will tell you that our military is reliant on China, lithium and batteries, and we're a little terrified of that. So lithium is the new gold rush. It's going to get a lot of state, federal, local support from governments, and I don't have a problem with that if it's done well and it's regulated. therefore, at the state level is absolutely, you know, Nevada's got probably quite a bit of lithium. We need to see that a fair amount of federal monies and mining monies are put back into the communities where the lithium is coming out of. We also need to be sure, who's regulating them, and this sulfur transfer, which, trying to dig into it and everything, but, liquid sulfur heated, where is it happening? Now, a lot of that hasn't probably been determined because the city council land issue they just barely voted to even opt to discuss it. I was very proud to hear our commissioners all bring up points about this, and my comment for that would be for our commissioners to stay strong, and you guys represent us, the community, not just for expansion and future monies and jobs, but for a place to live. So, the city council meeting, it got said, I don't think it was per se meant that way, that the commissioners had their deal, the city council had theirs, and there really wouldn't be a lot of working together. I think all levels of government, including yours, for the state, need to be looking into this and keeping a watchful eye that 95 people are dying. It's needed to be addressed for a lot of years. I drive out there quite a bit. It's a pretty tough road, and you better be careful where you pass, or you better wait. A lot of people don't wait, and there's accidents and people die. I lived in Vegas years ago when there was roads that were doing the same thing down there. I think that the mining companies who are represented here today as well are willing to do whatever they can, but I think it needs to go beyond just asking the mining company. I mean, just recently, that $34 million expansion in Goldfields of moving the highway for a mine to go about happened when people communicated, worked together, and I've got comments and calls out to find out who actually paid for that. Was it the state or Waterton Mining Company? That's who I was told. But that stuff happens all the time. Mines are willing to share the wealth, but only with what they have to, and only with what they're asked to, and that's why our commissioners and our group of people who represent us stay strong. New process, I'm being told, we'll be meeting later in the week with these people. They're good people. I know some of the people that represent them, worked with them in the past in the gold mining industry. I would highlight for everybody, get this information out, okay? Lithium's not going away, it doesn't look like. I mean, I got my opinion on electric cars and the charging stations, but that's where the world is headed, okay? And whether it's lithium in the end, or there's better chemicals or whatever, we're headed that direction, and right now, our own government is very supportive of lithium mining. So BLM and others are letting projects kind of go quickly, where I think we need to watch out as a group and a community. And that's from somebody who made a living in mining, who supports mining in general, but safely and properly done. So I, out of this, I got asked to kind of watch a little bit. I'm studying lithium mining and retired. I have no intent of being in any kind of mining again, but I'm doing that work for my fellow community members in Humboldt County and the local area. And we'll be asking questions and we'll share the answers with. But it would be good to see both our commissioners, the city council, share this information with people. It can be done. The world is going to grow. The jobs in places like this are going to come. But be forthcoming with, is there better areas to put this transfer station? And if not, what are you going to do for the community and to ensure? I mean, at this point, the railroad hasn't jumped in on it. The airport, I don't know if they've made a final determination yet or not as to what the airport even wants this amount of chemicals there. I remember these arguments when Sanko came in as well. And Sanko's done an excellent job providing cyanide to most of the U.S. very safely and very well. And they have a lot of dangerous chemicals over there as well. So we're looking into it for the community people and just staying open-minded. But I think with this whole lithium thing, that our state government needs to be holding the federal government accountable. That would just be a comment. Thank you to the commissioners, because it sounds like you guys are all on top of it. Share that with the people, because as you can hear with a lot of people, they don't much have a lot of trust that it this is doing anything more than just, business and a couple of handshakes, and we're gonna be piling sulfur and burning it and everything else. I know what it's like in dealing with chemicals in a mine site. I paved square miles with asphalt, liner underneath to keep chemical spills, scrubbers, but I've also seen places that have let dust blow and everything else that, weren't doing it quite so well. So I would just, question that everybody stay diligent and communication, and then to Lithium America, Lithium Nevada, start probably meeting with people. I mean, the mine's looking like it's going other than injunctions, which will be settled eventually. This loadout station, meet with people, be open and honest. Some of the last meeting, the things that were thrown out as these chemicals are the same chemicals underneath your sink and stuff. And gold mining with cyanide and everything, we've thrown that out as well. That's true to a point. There's not potentially 13 rail cars of caustic soda underneath my sink. I do know how that works, so I know the questions to ask, and we will be asking them for the community. But I would just like to see all our state government. You guys should be going after it. If we're going to get a bunch of lithium mines in Nevada, let's get our fair share, both from the federal government and from the lithium mining companies. And that was one just comment basically to thank our commissioners, just, ask them to stay strong on this, So like I said, it's gonna probably go through, it is a new process, I don't know much about it, but I will. I'm definitely looking into it, and I do know processing, so. The other one is something that's been going on since the COVID, and it's very concerning to me in our community where we have both, would appear to be a very high meth problem, and now we have a very high stealing problem. I mean, I'm talking trailers, taken out of people's yards, camp trailers in the middle of the day, stolen. Four-wheelers, broken into places. Can't leave anything. Used to be I'd leave the keys in my truck, and if my neighbor needed it, he'd take it. Now I don't even like leaving them in my locked house for fear of thievery. But during COVID, we backed away. Gotta stay away from people. We let a lot of criminals out of jail, as you guys are aware. Smaller, lesser crimes, and now I hear we're decriminalizing so much of this. Talking on a cell phone. Now the reason, like them or not, having done it or do it or not, that we did the cell phone thing is people were getting killed. So now we're gonna decriminalize that. We're also decriminalizing a lot of other things. When is the last time anyone saw anyone pulled over for a cracked windshield, which impedes your ability to see? Our sheriffs got pretty involved in our local sheriff, the campaigns and everything, and asking me questions. The answer I hear from both city and our county sheriffs is that the laws have changed. We can't do anything about that anymore. You see two people, categorize them or not, looking like homeless people with a shopping cart, which is obviously stolen because Walmart isn't handing them out for free, and a toolbox and a bunch of stuff in it, running across the road, looking behind them, and our sheriff rig stops, lets them cross it, and drives away. I grew up in Nevada, rural Nevada, over in Ely, and all over the state of Nevada in mining. That's not kind of the way it used to go. It used to be you'd stop and check them, and you had the right to, but now it's like, oh well, unless they've done something. But this community is rampant with theft of not even a small nature. I'm talking enclosed trailers. People are hooking up. I just recently spent almost $1,000 on trailer locks and everything, and to chain all my stuff down and to keep all my stuff locked up for these people are driving all throughout our community. And the few times they've caught them, it's tended to be drug-related people or groups and everything. So my question is what are we doing besides now making smaller, lesser crimes? I mean, I hear coming from California that they're pushing laws that say, if I, as a homeless person or whatever, need your stuff more than you, it's okay to steal it. Where is this going, and where is it going in Nevada, I guess, because I do know there is legislation. My wife lost her driver's license for a year. She got caught 3 times talking on the phone.
It was 6
Pretty
times.
adamant about it. 6 times. So she now just maybe put a very expensive system in her car to make make sure she don't talk about the phone. And at the time, I had to drive her for a year. It's a good thing I retired because I was a personal chauffeur for a year. But the issue being, there was a reason for it, right? Kids, young people, people are dying talking on the phone. There's accidents, people are dying. And it was a very big concern for both Nevada and the country. And now we're decriminalizing it. It's no big deal. And the police tell me, we're talking on our phone, so why do we care? So, where are we headed with that in Nevada, with this theft, with the drugs, and just decriminalizing everything because COVID said that's what we should do?
And thank you for the good insight. Regarding criminal justice reform, so in 2019, it was not 2021, we passed AB 236, was a really big omnibus criminal justice reform bill from Assemblyman Yeager. There were some great things in there, but there were things I couldn't support. I was a no. The governor addressed some of that last night, and a lot of it is this threshold of $900. You can steal $950 worth of stuff and not be prosecuted. Our son, when he was in college, was a manager at Target, and that was the rule. 900. Well, it was in California, and then we brought that rule here. And he's like pulling his hair out. Like, he's chasing people out the store. It's less than $950. And then the big bosses said, don't go after him. It's not worth it. It's $950, so we're not gonna be able to prosecute him, and I don't want you endangered. So that I think we're going to hopefully maybe address. You have to have some sort of respect in theft. I never understood any threshold on theft. I don't care, when I was a kid and I stole a candy bar, my mom marched my butt back there and I had to apologize and return it. So I'm going to hopefully address that. And letting people out during COVID, but letting people out and not doing time. There's this balance we're trying to find, I think, when part of the problem too is the Department of Corrections, where they're underpaid, we're understaffed, and we don't have the right oversights. There are things happening in our prisons that are a big concern. And so we want our prisons just a holding place. Are they do we rehabilitate there? What's the recidivism rate? There's so many complex questions we're trying to address. I'm the daughter of a DA. So, I tend to have this lens of, but then I also have this idea of justice and mercy and finding that balance, right? Without being too overly giving criminals an out, but yet also the spirit of the law and not the letter of the law in certain instances, as I saw my father do as a DA. So a long answer to your question is, the governor mentioned public safety is one of his pillars, education and the economy. Those are the three pillars of his administration. He has some suggestions. Of course, he comes from the trenches as a sheriff, and so I think we'll have a lot to hear and consider as we serve on judiciary. All three of us serve on judiciary. So, point taken, I have the same concerns, and I will be a voice for making sure that we are, making sure that we hold the line where we've seen things kind of fall apart. Unintended consequences too. Sometimes legislation gets passed, a student restorative justice bill that I know your superintendent here has worked with me and the other superintendents in the rural counties to address the concerns we saw over this restorative justice, that you can't expel certain students, and we've seen some unintended consequences from that. I'm carrying a bill to address that, working with one of the co-sponsors from the last session who had that bill, and hope to fix some of those issues so our school districts aren't hamstrung with dangerous students, because it has become a huge problem. So, thank you.
Absolutely excellent. I would like to highlight Assemblywoman. Thank you for that. You're right. Get it while they're kids. Don't wait till it becomes a problem. Don't wait till fire is unfightable. Get it while it's small. Get them in the schools. Get it when they're young. Get it taken care of before it gets totally out of hand. The other thing I would just highlight is maybe get this information down to these local rural sheriff's groups or whatever, because I know there's a lot of frustration talking to the deputies. We can't do anything, we just drive around unless somebody shot somebody or we're told to, we don't touch anything.
Can I just
Not
say
like
to
it was
you,
just a few years ago.
for that, I'm gonna give you a different perspective. I think that sometimes, I don't think that we make laws, and I don't think that what was done in AB 236 was meant to be an all holds barred, and hands off on criminality, right? And so, we also have a responsibility as leaders, whether we are sitting here, whether we are actively in policing, whether we are actively in community organizing. And by the way, you guys are fired with your community organizing. I'm just telling you, I'm taking notice, because we also have had similar issues with environmental things in the urban communities where we've had to come out and talk to people and do our own research. I get it, and it's hard, but I encourage you to work together and to stay focused and to be strong and support your leaders as you are doing, and to speak with holy boldness is what the old folks used to say when I was coming up, because this is your community, and when everybody else is gone, what's left for you? So I understand that, and stay strong. But when it comes to the application of the law, I think that we have to recognize too that we have a responsibility to not just look at the spirit, but what the law intended. And sometimes I hate to say this, and Ira and I had some discussions, which is how all this started in the last session, where laws tend to be implemented differently in different communities. So the communities that I represent, a lot of these decriminalization things are because of profiling and historic injustices. In my neighborhood, jaywalking was a misdemeanor, jaywalking. But jaywalking was really often only implemented in my neighborhood. And if you went to another neighborhood, they never got pulled over for jaywalking. It was used often as an excuse to pull somebody over, right?
Yeah.
So I think that we have to be, we don't have to be everything. I would like to see us be sensible in how we're applying the law, to be sensible and fair. No one should have their stuff taken, nobody, right? But we also don't want to see what we saw in the 90s, where we were putting people in jail for taking a pack of gum, right? We don't want to see young people thrown out of school because they've gotten into a fight with another young. I mean, when I was a kid, kids would fight sometimes, right? But and again, a different perspective, what the statistics are showing us nationally is that young black girls and young black boys would get kicked out of school, suspended, put in continuation school for fighting, but other children would get a second or third chance. So how are we being equitable in the application of the law? This is our responsibility in each jurisdiction to say to ourselves as humans, as citizens of this beautiful state, as colleagues one to another, as neighbors, that we're gonna hold ourselves, our leaders in our schools, and our policing, our DAs, our PDs, everybody. Let's be fair about what we're doing. If Johnny over here is acting up and he can't behave himself in school, whether he's black, white, green, or blue, young man, you need to be someplace else. But if we're saying, well, Johnny can get away with it, but Susie over here can't, then we have to be honest about what we're doing, right? And decriminalization is not bad across the board. How are our leaders applying it? And I would guess that maybe there could be a little bit of drama in some of this, and maybe a little bit of disinformation. So we probably need to just fine tune. We have a couple 100 miles to go back. I'm sure we'll have some discussions about this. We sit on judiciary. I'm gonna have to fight with this guy, I'm sure.
She will.
With some Senate stuff. And we will talk about it and we will work it out. I hear you. And I don't appreciate that you have to spend $1,000 on locks. You're retired, you could be doing something else with that money, right? Just like in my neighborhood, I don't want anybody breaking into my stuff either, right? So we will work to see what we can do to make this more equitable so that our police are empowered, but also held accountable and be fair.
Yeah, absolutely, I agree. It could partially be a bit of an excuse for not to have to do anything.
Well,
You run across that here and there as well, so it just comes down to the accountability.
I'll address your lithium points. The very first time I even heard about the mine was in this very room. That great big Polish guy, I can't think of his name at the moment, for the thing. But the reality is what you hit on was this is a national security issue as well as just a typical mining situation. The Biden administration just gave $700 million to Ioneer down in Esmeralda County. That is very likely going to occur at this mine as well because the national need for lithium is so great. As you pointed out, we're getting it from communist China. It isn't our buddy. So this lithium mine, I can guarantee, is going to happen. Okay? And I don't have any privy information, national, or anything like that, but it's going forward. So what we need to do is get as much money from the federal government as possible to help minimize some of the impacts on the community, and that's what I think that $700 million is starting to do down in Esmeralda County, and it's going to happen here too. There will be federal dollars that will help deal with issues. Whether or not they change the spur that you want to use or whatever, it is coming now, okay? So what the community needs to do is say, okay, let's maximize the dollars that we get in the community to help minimize the impact. But as far as blocking the mine itself, I think it ain't gonna happen. It's federal land, it's a national issue. Like you mentioned, who uses the stuff? I'm a plumbing contractor. All my batteries now are lithium. I pay $110 a battery, by the way, for my Milwaukee 18-volt battery. It's lithium. The demand is spiked. But we also represent Albemarle, we did, in Esmeralda County. That was the only mine in the nation that produced 5,000 tons a year. The demand is in the 100,000 tons a year thing. And instead of getting it from Nevada and in the continental United States, we're going to Chile and Argentina and worst of all, China. So I think it's coming. So what the community needs to do, and I can guarantee that the mining people through the federal level is going to want it. That there's a big backlash over the location of the transfer point. That can probably be worked out. But as far as the community thinking it's going to stop this mine altogether, I don't think it's happening. And from experience, watching all this stuff, if you were to have this exact discussion about the gold mines in this county and Elko County and so forth 25 years ago, there were all sorts of things about Florida Canyon and how horrible it's going to be and how the cyanide's going to poison the aquifers and right downstream from Lovelock. And guess what? If you listen to the exclusively negative comments about that mine, at the time, you wouldn't have those mines that you were employed at for 30-something years. And we wouldn't have the resources from it, and the community wouldn't have benefited so much from the employment and the tax revenue and so forth. So we got to be careful about, look, it's the old NIMBY thing, right? Not in my backyard, I got it. And if we can transfer it to another location, find it in. But it's going to happen. So, I'm just saying that from a realistic national perspective. One thing that those of us who are old sagebrush rebels realize is, look, that public land is controlled by 49 other states. There are 330 million Americans, 3 million of them are Nevadans, and guess who's going to make the ultimate decision on how that land is used? The people that own that, the other 339 million, 29 million people that actually own the public domain of the state of Nevada. So, if you don't like the Sagebrush Rebellion, by the way, I'm an old Sagebrush rebel, but I'm getting to be like a dinosaur in the world, I'm afraid, especially in the Nevada legislature. But again, we don't get to control all those decisions on federal land. And if we think our county commission is going to be able to stop a multi-billion-dollar lithium project when the nation as a whole needs it, ain't going to happen. So let's give as much dollars to the community as possible, as much oversight as we can, make them jump through as many hoops as necessary, relocate the transfer station if necessary, but don't go on the assumption that you're going to block this mine. It's not going to happen. I just don't see that happening. And I don't think, honestly, that's a good thing in the long run for Humboldt County or our nation.
I don't disagree with that. That's my point exactly. It's for our commissioners and everybody, and you as well, to see that we get every dollar. Having been on the other side of that table, like I said, I know what it's like. When we can't give any more as a mine, we'll tell you, and then you just back off again and take what you wish to get to there. So those thoughts will be coming.
Well, and one thing this makes me think of, and believe me, we really do take into consideration your concerns. You know, I have a personal situation that we lived through that was nothing on the scale of what you're dealing with having, you know, this in your backyard. But we lived raising our kids in this idyllic little spot. The largest artificial turf, baseball, football, soccer fields in all of North America was built in our front yard. And, you know, we fought against the county commission, the city council, all of it. It ended up coming, you know, so I have just a slight taste of how that despair that you feel. But I think the lesson we learn here, and you don't know us very well, but one thing you can count on, this one in particular, he calls it as it is. He'll let you know if he can or he can't. Same with me. We call out crap when we see it, and we also give credit where we need to see credit given. And I know that she's cut from the same cloth as well. So we're not here to blow smoke and make you feel better. We're here to say, this is what you're dealing with. So I think that's really great advice. What can you do? So here's what happens to us in the legislature. So the two of us serve in the minority party. And in the last two sessions, we were completely, the governor, the Senate, and the Assembly were controlled by the opposite party. So we begin to feel, how are we even relevant, right? I mean, we were treated with respect by our colleagues, but you feel that you don't have, you might say stuff, but is it gonna go anywhere? Our attitude was, well, there are bills that are difficult for us. We call them, if that bill's a butcher knife, we're gonna try to make it a butter knife. That's kind of how I might see you feel. This is coming, how do I minimize, and in all due respect, because we've been engaged with mining, of course, it's a huge part of our district. And just because my family was in mining doesn't mean that I'm not gonna call out crap. Because this state I love as much as you do, regardless of what mining has to offer. So you just look for ways that, as you've mentioned, is it Murphy, Mr. Murphy? How can we work with it? How can we partner with these mining companies and be kind of partners in doing this? So, you know, I don't know what comfort that gives you, but we only can do what we can do. And when you ask us to maybe see if we can hold the feds accountable, believe me, that is like the biggest lift imaginable. We haven't had any luck with that, as evidenced by the feral horses, right? They don't listen to us. They've had 50-something years to get that together, and we are
Worse than ever.
Yeah, so if we have any say-so with the feds, we try, but we don't always get what we want. So thank you, though, very much for all the input, the good, the bad, the ugly, and that's what we're here for.
There'll be a lot of money out there available. Just do everything you can to see it comes there.
Save your family.
Exactly. Keep that beautiful. We can mine and keep it beautiful.
Right. So folks, I think we got to end it now because these guys need to be meeting in 9 minutes, 8 minutes now. So anyway, thank you for all your input. We really appreciate it. And thank you, Senator and Senator. We so appreciate you.